He can use mana. Joshua looked at the others. Listen here. Judging an opponent's ability based on their appearance is a grave mistake you make on the battlefield. Anyone who still doubts my strength, step forward. I'm ready to accept the challenge. The knights then one by one stepped forward and knelt on one knee before Joshua. The 23rd knight is pleased to meet you, young Master Joshua. The 35th knight is pleased to meet you, young Master Joshua. The 43rd knight, the 13th knight is pleased to meet you, young Master Joshua. The 65th knight is pleased to meet you, young Master Joshua. Cain stood behind with a very pleased expression. He really did it. In the kingdom of Avalon, there was a knight who broke the conventional rules with just a spear. A knight with a tall figure in a black cloak with a powerful red spear seemed to have reached the level of a master. He was an unparalleled spear knight. With the spear in his hand, he defeated all the most vicious armies to protect the peace. He was a great hero. Thanks to that knight, the kingdom of Avalon escaped war, and he was revered and admired by everyone. Hailed as the strongest person on the Avalon continent, he was Joshua Sanders. However, his life ended due to the betrayal and schemes of the people he valued most. As darkness enveloped the forest, a person holding a black crystal ball in his hand spoke to Joshua with a voice full of contempt. Think about it for such an omnipotent, unparalleled knight to suffer such a helpless death like this. Joshua covered his mouth with his hand and coughed up a large mouthful of blood. His whole body trembled. Perhaps he was severely injured in battle. On his righteous face, his eyebrows furrowed his expression, one of extreme pain. On the opposite side, a group of people stood watching Joshua struggle in agony with a look of great satisfaction. Their faces were cold as they awaited Joshua's death. This was the result they desired most. Joshua staggered about to lose his footing, clutching his chest as he glared at the group with resentful eyes. Why? A man in a black cloak said, You are the one who caused his mana to increase to its maximum limit. The incompatibility of dark energy and divine power is now conflicting within your body. He walked up to Joshua. At this point, he could no longer stand and collapsed, his hands on the ground trying to prevent his whole body from falling. He looked at Joshua like a wolf watching its prey dying and said mockingly, If you were an ordinary person, you would surely be dead due to the effects of the conflict. Joshua looked at him resentfully with hateful eyes. Blood still stained the corner of his mouth. His teeth clenched tightly. Why? His hands clenched into fists, and out of frustration, he punched the ground. He never thought of competing for the throne, nor did he ever think of becoming a leader. All his life, Joshua just wanted to show everyone the magnificence of the spear in his hand. He wanted to use all his talent to escape a dull life with the title of a concubine's son and be loyal to the king, who was also his close friend. The same person who was now standing on the opposite side watching him collapse, with a satisfied gaze anticipating Joshua's death. King Caesar's eyes looked at him coldly, without a trace of pity. It seemed Joshua's tragic end was what he had long desired, and it was bound to happen to end the prolonged civil war in the kingdom Joshua had served as a protective shield for the king his entire life. But what he received was a tragic end. Joshua struggled to keep himself from falling. So why Joshua looked at the group with hatred. The man in the white cloak, the mage of the Evergrande Magic Tower, said to him, Joshua, there are those whose existence is considered a threat to the world. Because the civil war has ended, the king has secured his position. He can plan to take whatever he wants without fearing anything, and the only fear the king has is you, Joshua. Joshua couldn't believe it and looked up at him. He had devoted his entire life to the king only to be seen as a threat that needed to be eliminated in the end. The mage continued to speak. Even if a warrior clings to the mana he has earned his entire life, spending nearly a decade to forge a dagger into a sword brimming with power. However, for a knight, even if people were stacked on top of each other, you could still completely do it with that energy, he said, looking at the suffering and pained Joshua. How many enemies have you defeated with that spear? His hand tightened around the orb in his grasp. The orb began to emit an eerie blue light. No, I know you have reached a new level of power. The pain immediately squeezed Joshua's chest again. The orb in the mage's hand emitted a stronger light. It is the orb found in the ruins of Ammon. A knight stepped in front of Joshua. I was very afraid that your terrifying spear might one day chop off my head. I was so afraid that I had crazy thoughts. His expression was serious. It seemed that what he had just said was something that made him feel uneasy and worried just thinking about it. Joshua gritted his teeth. Disappointment and pain had brought down the strongest knight in the Avalon Empire. He collapsed in front of that wicked group as the white-robed mage said mockingly, "Thank you for everything up until now. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't be here now. We are truly very grateful to you." A red light enveloped Joshua like flames burning him. The mage's eyes filled with joy as he smirked and spoke despicably. "Farewell, my good friend." Joshua fell down beside the pool of blood. His breath was faint. King Caesar put on a face of fake sorrow. "I can't bear to watch anymore." "The final moment of my best friend," he said, then turned and walked away. The others followed him one by one. Joshua used his last bit of strength to shout, "Caesar Van Britten. This is not the end for me." A blue circle with a star in the middle appeared under Joshua's feet. He began to panic. The circle detonated. "With my current ability, I have 5 minutes. How meaningless." Joshua punched the ground in despair. What an unparalleled knight. A ridiculous title in the end. Just a lowly knight betrayed by those he trusted and dying in an unknown field. Damn it. A sound came from the side. He looked over at the spear emitting a red light lying nearby. The blood-stained spear known as the Grim Reaper on the battlefield Lucia. He tried to crawl closer to his spear. Lucia emitted a brilliant red light, the spear that had once swept through battles with him. Majestic and renowned, he once thought it could create some special magic. But he never thought he would have to create that magic. He shouted at Lucia, "Come here." He tried to inch forward, just a little more. Finally, his hand grasped the spear. The ground around him was slowly cracking. His eyes were resolute, his hand gripping the spear tightly, waiting for the end. The ground cracked open, lifting Joshua up. Light shot out through the cracks. A terrifying beam of light shot up, flinging Joshua high into the air. A terrifying explosion erupted, tearing through the night, shattering the dreary silence of the forest. In the sky, the moon was as crimson as the resentful eyes of the betrayed knight. A unique individual in the knightly land of the Avalon Kingdom, Joshua Sanders, had ended his life. A deep pit appeared in the ground, burying Joshua along with all his glory. An untimely death unfitting of his title as the invincible spearman. Joshua woke with a start. Looking around in a daze, Joshua was lying on a pile of hay in a stable, surrounded by the horses of Duke Agnes's household, with sunlight streaming through the wooden cracks. A pile of hay. Where am I? What happened? Joshua thought back to when he was thrown into the air. I should have been blown to bits. How Joshua raised his hands to look at them. Incredible surprise. Why are my hands so small? It's impossible. Joshua's face was stunned. Joshua rushed outside, bent down to look into a water barrel. The image of a young boy appeared, leaving him utterly astonished. I've been de-aged? No, he suddenly thought of something. This is where I used to live. I've returned to the past. He looked at the familiar surroundings, the corner of his mouth turning up. How interesting. Joshua's eyes lit up his mouth, forming a very smug smile. I've received an incredibly rare opportunity. Caesar Van Britten, don't expect anything good to happen to you. Just as Joshua was feeling joyous and triumphant, 3 knights approached from a distance. They looked incredibly arrogant and haughty, all 3 wearing dark blue uniforms. Wearing boots and with swords at their sides, they looked at Joshua with contempt. One walked in front, with his hands in his pockets, an insolent look on his face. Behind him was a tall man carrying a wooden plank on his shoulder, also arrogant and defiant. The remaining one wore a cloak and seemed calmer. The one in the lead shouted in the boy's face with a disdainful voice, "Hey, why aren't you scooping up the horse manure? What are you standing there gaping for?" Joshua looked at them with cold eyes. He tried to remember who they were. This group could be the soldiers of Duke Agnes. The 3 captains, Rolchi, Eloyd, and Gort. The one who had spoken earlier, seeing no reaction from Joshua, roared as if to show his authority. "You should answer my question, you brat." Another one said to him with a sneer, "Eloyd, did you forget? He's mute." Of course he can't answer, the other guy also laughed scornfully. "Ah." Joshua frowned at them, suppressing his anger inside. "I'm just pretending to be mute, because if I utter half a word, I'll get beaten up." Lloyd started looking around. They joked with each other in an improper tone. "Oh, it seems Lucia isn't here," Gort said to him. "Keep your mouth shut. Do you want the Duke's family to hear? She's being watched 24/7. If you keep shouting Lucia's name like that." Joshua started to think. My mother Lucia. In his mind, an image of a woman with a gentle smile and kind eyes, her blue hair covered by a white scarf, appeared. She was wearing a maid's uniform. He remembered something else, his eyes becoming thoughtful. Besides the servants of the Agnes household, I am the bastard son of a servant, a woman forced to sleep with the Duke. The image of Duke Agnes appeared a cold man. His face always exuded an air of authority. On his shirt collar was a silk scarf with a sparkling blue stone that only nobles were fortunate enough to possess. On his shoulders was a pure white fur-collared cloak. His entire being emanated nobility royalty. Joshua suddenly understood. So that's why these soldiers know I'm a bastard. They bully me because I have the blood of a servant, and they find it amusing, especially these three in front of me. There will come a day when I settle all these debts. He looked at the three soldiers who still had wicked expressions making jokes about his mother. Suddenly, I miss Lucia so much today. Somehow. Rolce. Rolce nudged Elloyd with his elbow, reminding him of his name with a sarcastic tone. Anyway, keep your mouth shut, Elloyd. If someone hears, we'll be in trouble. You're overthinking it, Elloyd said, then pointed at Joshua and sneered. Who would be in a smelly stable like this except for that kid? Even so, Lloyd put on a very smug face and continued. Duchess Vanessa also said that if we secretly get rid of Lucia and that kid, she would take responsibility for us. He put his arm on Rolce's shoulder and said sarcastically, This is a good opportunity. It's a pity we couldn't find Lucia. Rolce sighed softly. You're right. Lloyd's face suddenly became more excited than ever. So what can we do now? Of course, play with this kid. Without Lucia, Rolce also enthusiastically agreed. Hearing their words, Joshua's eyes turned red. The anger he had suppressed was like an erupting volcano, his lips pressed tightly together. You who insult my mother. I won't let you run wild, you bastard. Joshua's hands clenched tightly. He closed his eyes and began to think, will it work? The mana training method I practiced, which later made me different from ordinary people. That's the method I discovered with Lucia at the ruins. The results after practicing this method are very special, and you can reach your maximum potential in a short time. The important thing is the fundamental principle of this method is that it's completely different. Unlike other methods, it doesn't track or use mana from the mana core in the lower abdomen, but instead uses the pre-existing fragments of energy in the surroundings. It is not limited by the mana core, the vessel that contains mana. Your entire body can absorb mana, and you can focus mana wherever you want and use it instantly. Joshua's hands clenched. He tried to redo what he had done in his past life. A golden light emanated from his hands. For a mana user, creating mana is a process that everyone must go through, because I don't need to go through a process that takes a whole year to accomplish. It's inevitable that I'll have a start, like a mana user. The other soldiers saw Joshua just standing silently and started to rush him. Let's give this guy a punch, brothers. My blood starts to boil when I see that guy's face, Elloyd taunted Rolce. The other guy angrily shouted, Shut up, it's not that. You look like you're green with envy because Gort could flirt with that woman so easily. The tall man in front of Joshua raised his club. Hey, it seems I'm about to lose my self-control. They were terrified when they saw Joshua standing still and motionless, without any reaction. What's wrong with him? Passed out, standing up. Really? He looks like a dried-up statue. Joshua remained focused on his method of concentrating power. A golden halo appeared around him. Just gather mana in my palms. I just need to gather mana in my palms. Before I returned, it took me almost 10 years just to gather mana in my palms. But now I know what I should do. If that's the case, then. Joshua suddenly opened his eyes, his pupils sharp. Gort saw him suddenly open his eyes and was startled, stepping back. He shouted, You little mouse, you dare glare at me. He swung his club and rushed forward, intending to give Joshua a thorough beating. Joshua clenched his fist. He concentrated power into his hand and delivered a stunning punch to the man's face. The other guy fell to the ground, rolling around like a trapped animal. His face plunged down, giving the earth passionate kisses. He cried out pitifully. The other two were stunned, and Elloyd shouted, What's wrong with that guy? What just happened? Joshua frowned slightly. The source of power within him felt very strange. It made him a little uncomfortable, feeling like a lump that was both sticky and disgusting. There shouldn't be anything in my stomach, right? There's something I've never felt since I returned to the past. Eloyd drew his sword and aggressively approached Joshua. Are you tired of living, you dog? Rolchi stood behind, looking bewildered. Joshua gritted his teeth and began to calculate this small body is fundamentally not strong enough to resist. But if I can take down this charging Eloyd, it's likely Rolchi won't come near me. He looked at Rolcha, who was sighing in the distance, because this one is smarter than the other two. Just one more time. He clenched his fists, concentrating his power once more. Eloyd swung his sword, slashing forward. Today is the day you die. Joshua ducked, avoiding his sword strike. Then he gathered momentum and swung his arm. A powerful punch landed on Eloyd's face, making him spit blood from his mouth. He spurted blood like a pump, and flew far away, landing heavily in front of Rolcha. Rolchi looked at Joshua with utter bewilderment. He trembled slightly and thought to himself, I can't believe this mute was hiding his skills. The first time could be a coincidence, but it can't be a coincidence twice. Joshua's whole body was also sweating, his hands trembling. His whole body felt drained. I had no idea it would hurt this much. The side effects of using a large amount of mana. He looked at Rolcha. It seemed he was also a bit worried that he would charge as he had used too much energy. He sized up the man. Rolcha is someone who climbed to the captain's position, largely due to his cunning with talent making up the rest. Although he's not as strong as Gort or Eloyd, it's still dangerous to fight him one-on-one in my current state, but I can't show my weakness. He looked towards Rolcha. His gaze was hard, as if to show him that he would give him the same fate as his two comrades from earlier. Any last words? The other guy panicked, breaking out in a cold sweat. You can talk, he pointed at Joshua, as shocked as if he had seen a monster. He stood staggering in utter terror. Joshua spoke firmly to Rolchi again. From this moment on, you bastards who dared to insult my mother, I swear on my name, I won't let a single one of you survive. His eyes were determined. Asserting with certainty that his words would come true, Rolche backed away in fear. He screamed and ran for his life. Ah, a monster, ah! He left, and Joshua coughed violently, then gasped for breath. I'm done for. As soon as he finished speaking, he collapsed. Earlier, when fighting those two, he had used all his strength. After all, it was beyond the endurance of a 9-year-old body. His eyes grew dim and then slowly closed. This time he was completely exhausted. The castle of Duke Agnes was as magnificent as a palace. The bright sun shone on the massive white walls, making them even more radiant. Below in the castle hall, the servants' voices buzzed with gossip. Have you guys heard the news? Joshua, that mute boy who lives in the stable, knocked out 3 captains. Do you know, the servant told the others in a very dramatic tone, as if it were some miraculous story. Another servant also chimed in. I heard it too. There's also a rumor that he was pretending to be mute. The remaining servant looked skeptical, his face full of doubt. Young Master Joshua, the half-brother who is 5 years younger than young Master Babel, did he really do that? How strange. He spoke up, refuting the others. Do you believe it? It's just an unfounded rumor. He's just an orphan, and besides, how can a mute child wake up one morning and suddenly be able to speak? Just think, how could he defeat 3 captains with his bare hands? Another said to him, I know, but if that really happened, the plan for Duke Agnes's successor might change. The other servant continued to show his disbelief. Even if Joshua's skills are acknowledged, he still can't beat young Master Babel. You all know that, right? I agree with that too. Because young Master Babel is also a mana user now. Oh, that's the key point. Duke Agnes, who achieved the master title, only started using mana when he was 16, but the shadow of Duke Agnes is too large, the servant said, showing his support for Babel. Is it a challenge for him to become the successor? How absurd! Just then, Joshua opened the door and entered the hall, startling the other man. It seemed he felt guilty because he had just spoken ill of Joshua. He stammered, Young Master Joshua. When did you get here? Joshua looked at him sternly and said coldly, Go and tell the Duke that by order of the Duke's summons, Joshua von Agnes is here. Joshua emanated a murderous aura that made the servants recoil in fear. In the Duke's office, he sat at a large wooden desk carved with intricate patterns and gilded. Behind him was a glass door that let light in, making the room even more luxurious. The hanging curtains were meticulously embroidered, and the wall lamps were simple yet extremely elegant. Behind the Duke, the attendant stood silently. In front of the Duke, Rolche knelt down someone's shirt set to one side. The Duke asked, So you are Rolche. He raised his head trembling. Yes, my name is Rolche Duke. Agnes looked at him with half-lidded eyes. Which battalion are you from? The 29th Battalion. The Duke turned to ask his attendant. The 29th Battalion near Griezmann, right chiffon. Yes, my lord. The Duke raised 2 fingers and beckoned for Rolche to stand up. Understood. Bring that shirt here. The shirt with a hole torn in the middle that looked like it had been burned was brought before Duke Agnes. It could be the shirt of one of the 2 men knocked down by Joshua. The Duke looked at the shirt with a surprised and skeptical expression and asked, So, you mean Joshua is the one who did this to the shirt? Before Rolche could say anything, the attendant chiffon beside the Duke sternly threatened him. Think carefully before you answer. You know the consequences of lying, don't you? The other man answered awkwardly, Yes, yes. His face looked serious. He swallowed a gulp of saliva to get over his terror. It seemed just thinking back to that scene horrified him. This is not a lie, my lord. Hearing this, the Duke sighed and turned to ask the attendant chiffon, What do you think? Of course it is very hard to believe this, my lord. The Duke's expression was still skeptical. He raised his hand to touch his beard and said, Yes, it is hard to believe. How old is Joshua this year? Chiffon answered, 9 years old, my lord Duke. Agnes began to speculate. He stared at the torn shirt on the table. At that age, to be able to damage armor like that with just bare hands. Then if Joshua can use mana, that would be a small matter. Chiffon immediately jumped as if stepping on hot coals. My lord, that is impossible. Being able to use mana at only 9 years old is unheard of in history and has never happened in history. Even if it were a high-level skill, he would have to be a high-ranking B-class knight to be able to do that with his bare hands. Only then might a similar event occur. Seeing the Duke still lost in thought, Chiffon continued, Young Master Joshua is only 9. I don't believe he could do this. Then he looked accusingly at Rolche. I think they were afraid of being caught bullying young Master Joshua, so they made this up. If you permit me, I will immediately drag him out and straighten out the army. Rolche trembled, his face pale, sweat beaded on his forehead from fear. No, it's not. It's the truth. Chiffon pressed closer to him. How dare you raise your voice in front of his lordship? It's the truth. Please believe my words. Commander Chiffon. Chiffon drew his sword, intending to take the other's life. Even at this point, he's still spouting lies. The Duke immediately stopped Chiffon. That's enough, Chiffon. Chiffon still said resentfully. But my lord, to spare someone who spread a false rumor. Before he could finish, the Duke cut him off, standing up and leaning on the table with both hands. The matter will be resolved if we go see the person himself. It seemed only now did he think of the child who also carried his blood, but was always treated as a servant and had to scoop horse manure every day. It's been a long time since I've seen him. I will go see that child myself. Chiffon immediately showed a worried expression. The Duke is personally going to meet the son of a concubine. He has never granted anything to young Master Babel, who is said to have great potential. The Duke left his desk and asked, So where is Joshua? I heard he has come to the main house and is waiting in the lounge. The Duke lifted his foot and left the office. I understand led the way. Chiffon followed the Duke, reluctantly leaving Rolche there, sighing in relief for having just escaped a dire situation. The Agnes main house had long and wide corridors. On both sides were sparkling clean glass doors, carefully polished by servants' pillars carved and gilded, and precious paintings hanging on the walls. Young Master Babel was walking somewhere when he saw Joshua standing in the distance. His face became hateful, and loathing appeared in his eyes. What Joshua? Why is he here? He approached Joshua and shouted, Hey, what are you doing here? Joshua remained silent, not yet noticing him. He was staring at the painting of King Marcus, the reigning monarch of the empire. An aura of anger emanated from him. For some reason, whenever he looked at the portrait, he felt very angry. Caesar Van Britten. No matter what, I must get my revenge. He cursed silently in his heart. Babel saw no reaction from Joshua and clenched his fists in anger. Hey, you bastard! You dare to ignore me! He swung his arm to attack Joshua from behind, but suddenly Joshua turned and counterattacked, his hand catching Babel's fist completely. He squeezed Babel's hand, creating a cracking sound. Babel's face showed a flicker of surprise and a hint of fear. This strength. Is the rumor about knocking out 3 captains really true? You think I'll just stand still? Babel began to concentrate all his strength, intending to teach Joshua a lesson. Just then, Duke Agnes stepped out. "What are you doing?" Babel was startled and retreated in panic. "Father." Then he immediately switched to a respectful demeanor, kneeling on one knee and placing his hand on his left chest in a salute. "Greetings, Duke." The Duke looked at his first wife's son and said sternly, "I asked what you are doing here." "We were exchanging greetings." The Duke raised an eyebrow. "Greetings." He sighed and looked over at Joshua, who also nodded slightly. Chiffon, seeing Joshua not performing the salute, silently judged him. Is this guy crazy? Why isn't he kneeling to greet the Duke? He stepped forward and shouted in Joshua's face, "You are being disrespectful to the Duke. Greet him at once." "What are you doing? Why aren't you greeting him?" Duke Agnes stopped his attendant and said softly, his eyes filled with disgust. He called out Joshua. Joshua was still lost in anger due to the king's portrait. Hearing the Duke's call, he was startled and told himself, "Because that portrait reminds me of someone." So my anger started to explode, and I couldn't control it. This can't continue. Agnes won't let it go if that person dares to oppose him, even if it's the king. The Duke held out his hand and beckoned to Joshua, saying calmly, "If you have calmed down, then come here. I will personally confirm whether you truly have mana." The Duke's eyebrows furrowed slightly. His face showed anticipation to verify the doubts in his heart. Babel, kneeling beside him, looked over at Joshua in surprise. "What is this mana, that lowly wretch who scoops horse manure all day, meaning he has mana?" Babel gritted his teeth in anger, traces of hatred and jealousy clearly visible in his eyes. Chiffon approached Duke Agnes, wanting to stop him. "Duke, for you to do this." The Duke ignored his words and called Joshua again. "Joshua, come here." Joshua was a little worried. Duke Agnes, one of the 5 mana masters of this vast empire, a person very sensitive to mana. If he notices anything unusual, my plan will be ruined. Since when did he? Before Joshua could react, the Duke grabbed his wrist. Suddenly the old man cried out, "What this is?" The Duke's expression became extremely unsightly. Joshua looked at the Duke with suspicion. He calculated silently. If the Duke, who is sensitive to mana, finds out something I don't know, I'll have to come up with a new plan. The Duke's face was horrified. This thing, there's nothing," the attendant Chiffon beside him also exclaimed in surprise. "What, no mana at all?" The Duke released Joshua's hand in horror. Babel stood beside him with a smug look. I knew it. As if wanting to confirm, Chiffon approached and asked the Duke, "So the matter of young Master Joshua having mana has been confirmed to be false?" "I'm not talking about the mana core. All life in this world has mana existing within it. That also applies to ordinary people and even magical beasts. However, I can't sense any mana inside Joshua." Chiffon thought suspiciously. "Really can't sense mana? That means he's no different from an empty shell," he said to the Duke. "If that's the case, he was born with a body that cannot contain mana. I've never heard of such a case." Duke Agnes rubbed his fingers together and thought back to the sensation from earlier. I could feel something in his mana core, a sticky and unpleasant sensation that disgusted me. He said, "If it's not congenital, then from now on, I will keep an eye on Joshua." Chiffon immediately spoke up. "Your Grace, if young Master Joshua is congenitally unable to contain mana, then you don't believe those rumors are false. We can't let those soldiers spread rumors." The Duke glanced at him. Soldiers are also the Duke's assets. It wouldn't be wise to punish them just for those baseless rumors and reduce our resources. Chiffon lowered his head, not very pleased. I was too hasty. It seemed he was worried about too many people knowing about Joshua's abilities. This doesn't seem to benefit him. The Duke looked at Joshua and said, "Joshua, you will stay here for a while. Are there any empty rooms here?" Babel immediately shouted. He couldn't accept a manure scooper living in the main house. "But your Grace, Joshua can't." The Duke glanced at his son Babel. "Is there a problem?" Young Master Babel couldn't continue. He could only grit his teeth and accept it. "No, my lord." The Duke turned to speak to a close knight. Chiffon. "Yes, your Grace. From now on, train Joshua to become a knight. If you see that Joshua has talent, teach him the blood chain training method." Chiffon squirmed again, like a leech doused in lime. "What a training method, but isn't the young master's mana?" The Duke turned and walked away. "We need time. We will confirm it soon enough. Joshua was born with a body that cannot contain mana." "I hope that's not true." He left Joshua with a remark, "I'm counting on you." Joshua stood silently watching the Dukes retreating back, his eyes full of hope. The large door opened, and the Duke's attendant spoke, "Young Master Joshua, from now on, this room will be your new residence." Joshua looked at the spacious room with a large, soft bed, a few books on the shelf, and a dark red carpet on the floor. The room seemed large for a 9-year-old child. He was nonchalant, as if nothing had happened, his expressionless face stunning the servant. "Are those rumors true?" "He doesn't seem happy at all after learning he's been granted a benefit," he said to Joshua. "If you need anything, just call me." He thought again. It seems he's changed his attitude. Could it be because the Duke isn't here? Joshua let himself fall onto the bed. It was much softer than the pile of hay. I probably don't need anything, he thought, if only I could sleep soundly. Suddenly Joshua sat up and thought of the Duke's words. "I'm counting on you. He's expecting a good result." Duke Agnes spends most of his time in Akkadi, the capital of the Avalon Empire. He is on his territory only to rest when work is done. The territory of Agnes is a vast region. His castle is situated among high mountains. From the tallest tower of the castle, one can see the entire territory. In a vast room, Joshua was filled with doubt. A heap of tangled problems swirled in his mind. Duke Agnes, did he find something I don't know? The truth is, Duke Agnes knows about something I don't know, and it's very dangerous. But I'm still not sure. He jumped out of bed. Before anything happens, I need to regain my strength first. And to do that night in a corner of Duke Agnes's castle, a small figure somersaulted from above and landed lightly on the ground. As if the movement had been practiced for a long time and had reached a masterful level, Joshua landed in a sitting position with one hand on the ground, but it seemed his body was still weak. The complications from overusing mana have subsided, but regaining strength still takes longer than I thought. Suddenly, his whole body contracted, his abdomen throbbing with pain. A golden light emanated around him. He let out a small cry of pain, clutching his stomach. Joshua's whole body trembled and staggered. He shouted, "The tumor inside the mana core is reacting. I don't know if I'm sensing divine magic or demonic magic. That magical power is suppressing everything, Lukia." Why is Lukia here? Why is Lukia here and suppressing that power? Footsteps are approaching. 2 guards in white armor carrying torches approached upon hearing the sound. "Hey, did you hear something?" "Hear what? I didn't hear anything." The 2 guards shone their torches forward, searching. "There's nothing here." How strange, I remember seeing something. "Forget it. Let's go back. We have to switch with the other group." Joshua ran quickly, his breath ragged. Perhaps Lukia is the solution to this problem, but if I am controlled by the 3 power sources within me... Inside the warehouse, in the corner of Duke Agnes's garden, a woman's scream tore through the quiet space. "Let me go. Why are you doing this to me?" 3 soldiers were holding a woman, one holding both her hands. One drew his sword, preparing to do something cruel. The other stood watching everything. These were the 3 who had been defeated by Joshua at the stable, before you really don't know the reason why. Lloyd looked at the woman with hatred, drawing his sword from its sheath. "Because of your son, we all got disciplined. She is Joshua's mother." The woman bit the hand of the man holding her neck, forcing him to let go. Gort angrily pushed her to the ground. "What are you, crazy?" Lucia was pushed down, her head hitting the ground. Lloyd grabbed her hair and lifted her up roughly. "We just wanted to deal with you quickly, but you're wasting our time. Hold her, Lloyd. I'll take care of the rest." Rolche immediately grabbed Gort's shoulder. "Wait, Gort. Do we really have to do this?" "If that kid finds out..." Gort brushed Rolche's hand off him and insisted, "So what? Did you forget why we came here? We came here to beat that brat to a pulp. But I think this should stop." Gort dismissed his comrade's pleas. He said decisively, "Rolche, the lady said she would protect us. If you're scared, you have the right to back out of this game." Rolche stood silent, unable to say anything more. It seemed he was hesitating. Lloyd looked at him sarcastically. "Why are you so long-winded? If you're scared, then get lost. Don't make me laugh, Lil Lloyd. You say you're scared." Lucia had fainted from the pain. Lloyd grabbed her hair and lifted her up while Gort pointed the tip of his sword at her neck, preparing to stab. At that moment, a loud shout echoed from behind them. "Stop!" Rolche, seeing Joshua, fearfully tried to stop his 2 comrades. Gort Lloyd, stop it right now, that kid. The other two were still joking around. Perhaps they had already forgotten the punches from before. Ha, so you're here. We've been waiting for a while. Why are you so slow? Let us show you something interesting. Joshua was furious, his eyes crimson, his hands clenched, his teeth gritted together. Didn't we already settle this last time? Don't even think about getting out of here alive. Lucia struggled to open her eyes. She weakly called out to her son Joshua. Rolchi was terrified and trembled. Let's get out of here. We're going to be killed by that kid. Gort shouted. What are you talking about? You're just scared. Joshua's gaze hardened and he hissed, Get lost, while Rolchi backed away in fear. The other two continued to provoke Joshua. Joshua, I will surely make you like this for the rest of your life. Lloyd, remember to leave some for me. Joshua repeated sternly. I told you to get lost. Lloyd gripped his sword tightly. You little brat, who do you think you are? Suddenly a man jumped down from the ceiling. How did you know? How could you sense me? The other soldiers spoke up together. Sir Kane. Joshua looked at him and thought, that red insignia, the one with that red insignia is one of the 3 knights personally chosen by Duke Agnes, even with the blood chain. So the blood chain has started monitoring me. Did Chiffon request this? All 3 of them placed their hands on their left chests. An honor to meet you. Kane looked at the boy in front of him. It seemed he was very impressed with Joshua. This is the child from the rumors. Joshua asked him, let me ask. His face was serious. These soldiers are harming someone under the Duke's command. Kane's expression immediately fell. He seemed bewildered. Joshua asked again. According to the Duke's military law, how should this situation be handled? Kane felt an immense pressure weighing down on him. What is this pressure? I can't escape it. Kane's hand gripped his sword tightly. He drew his sword. Of course, execution on the spot. The other guys were horrified. Perhaps when they pointed their swords at Lucia's neck, they didn't think of this consequence. Kane swung his sword and rushed at them. They were too stunned to defend themselves. One by one, they were struck down by Kane's sword. They couldn't even manage a single counterattack, the sound of 2 swords clashing. Gort was lucky to block the sword strike that almost cut his throat. Sir Kane, wait. Kane didn't hear a word and directly struck him down. It was Rolch's turn. He used his bare hand to block the incoming sword. I'm the one at fault, please. Just as Kane was about to strike him down, Joshua shouted stop. Kane's sword stopped at Rolch's neck. It felt as if his neck would be severed in another second if Joshua hadn't stopped him. Rolche begged profusely. Perhaps he had been thoroughly terrified. Please forgive me this time. Kane threatened him. You should say a few less words if you want to live longer. Joshua approached. Kane, I told you to stop. Kane said sternly. This man dared to threaten a member of the Duke's family, therefore he must be punished. Kane said decisively, and it seemed he would not spare Rolcha. Joshua silently assessed Kane, although they are one of the 3 knights serving the Duke's family. The blood chain is the lowest rank. If he serves me, then this is a good opportunity for a blood chain member like him. He is probably the strongest C rank. He has all the skills to subdue the soldiers in a few simple sword strokes. The 2 from earlier lay sprawled on the floor, trembling like animals caught in a hunter's trap. Joshua spoke. You just said your name is Kane. Before you do, let me ask you a few things. Who do you serve? Kane turned to look at Joshua. He hesitated. I serve Duke Agnes. Joshua continued sternly, then another question. Who am I? Kane started to get flustered. His eyes filled with confusion, just as I predicted those terrifying eyes. Very similar to him. Kane released Rolsha. Joshua continued softly, sheathe your sword. Kane sheathed his sword. I will follow your orders. Rolchi, having escaped death, knelt and bowed to Joshua as if meeting a deity. Thank you, my lord. Thank you, young master. For the rest of my life I will be loyal to you. Thank you for forgiving me. Perhaps that arrogant man learned a valuable lesson today. Joshua looked at him without a shred of sympathy and warned him, I don't need your loyalty. I will never forgive those who dare to insult me and my family. However, because you are quick-witted, I know you understand what I mean. Tell the remaining soldiers to leave here, and not a word about today's events. If you dare to repeat something similar, I will end your life with my own hands. Rolchi trembled. Perhaps he was utterly terrified. Tears streamed from his eyes in fear. He was like an ant on a hot pan, terrified to the extreme. Joshua raised his voice again. If you understand, then get lost now. I understand, young master. He ran for his life as if staying for even one more second. He would be burned to death by Joshua's very gaze. Lucia let out a soft cry. Joshua quickly ran to his mother's side. Cain was a bit skeptical. Are you really the master I know? What a strange question. Isn't this too different? The master I know. Before Cain could finish, Joshua cut him off his eyes, carrying a hint of a smile. The concubine's son who never appears, the manure scooper in the stables. Cain lowered his head as if he had just done something wrong. Young master. All knights under the Agnes family must always follow Duke Agnes's requests. Joshua just turned his head to look at him. Cain continued. Once we reach the age of 23, we have the right to choose our own master. I will be chosen next year. Joshua looked at him with curiosity. Cain placed his hand on his left chest and bowed slightly. I believe in my intuition. Next year, I will leave there and serve you, young master Joshua. Joshua thought, he's making a decision while still thinking about the future. It would be great if I could choose the right shining gems in the Duke's family. Like Babel, he said, you're really odd. At Duke Agnes's room, Chiffon and the Duke were discussing something. There's Lady Cheryl. The Duke thought for a moment before Chiffon spoke. That's right, Babel already has the girl, so how can I? The 5 great dukes have a huge influence on the Avalon territory. Lady Cheryl is the daughter of the Fonte family, a family that rolchi to the rank of duke thanks to their wealth. Chiffon continued. As I said, this is the right choice to choose Lady Cheryl after considering the Fonte family. The Duke seemed not very pleased. It doesn't matter how much, but it's quite humiliating. Talent is what Duke Agnes always greedily seeks to possess. One can compare his greed for it to his greed for martial arts. He is a person who treats others based on their talent. That is the head of the Duke Agnes family. The Duke turned his back on Chiffon, who continued to ask, What's the matter, Duke? What about Joshua? The Duke began to remember his servant's son. Chiffon was stunned. What you mean? The Duke mused. I'm thinking of giving Iselin to Joshua. Chiffon squirmed again. It seemed all decisions regarding Joshua displeased him. Duke, how could you do that? You're giving Lady Iselin, who received a blessing from the heavens, to the cursed one, young master Joshua. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. He didn't seem pleased with any of the Duke's favorable treatment of Joshua. At midnight, in the Duke's northern garden, Joshua was trying to climb to the top of an ancient rock as large as a mountain. In his past life, he often went there to feel close to his deceased mother. But why is it so hard to climb now? He thought to himself. Was it always this high? He remembered that in his past life on this rock he had found a secret path. Joshua tapped the ground with his hand, fumbling around to search. This is where I found Lucia. Then he brought his hand to his mouth, bit it to let a few drops of blood fall and dripped them onto the ground. A circle of light appeared, opening an entrance to a temple. Just like that. Is this really the temple I came to in my past life? Everything before my eyes is completely different from my past life. In his previous life, when he saw this place, it was still intact, and Lucia was trapped in a pile of chains in the middle of the temple. But now the temple before him was in ruins. In the middle of the temple where he had seen Lucia, there was only an iron rod. Where is Lucia? Humph. He picked up the iron rod, and a blinding light flashed. A void appeared before Joshua's eyes. Where is this? A voice came from behind him. Over here. He turned to look and saw the iron rod from before. Who are you? You're the iron rod from earlier. I am not an iron rod. I am the spirit of a demon god, Lucia. Joshua was so surprised his mouth fell open. You mean the treasure of a demon god? You mean the Lucia? From my past life was the spirit of a demon god. And it has changed its form, Joshua cursed under his breath. Damn it, what is this impossible? It also changed after returning to the past with me. The iron rod spoke. We don't have time. What do you mean, as the days go by? The 2 energies inside you will corrode your body. There is only one method to stabilize the 2 energy sources within you and restore the hidden power inside you. You should restore your internal power with a short-term method. Currently, you must meet the minimum requirement of Spear Magic Level 4. Joshua was utterly astonished. Level 4. Joshua fell into deep thought, thinking back to his past life. Spear magic is the ancient magic I once learned. With this method, I found a way to implant mana and display enormous power. In Avalon, the sword is considered the strongest weapon, and the spear is seen as a fragile one. However, in my past life, the number of people who could stand against me could be counted on one hand. At that time, my spear magic also reached level 4. For comparison, a knight who can fully utilize sword paths with mana power upon reaching A rank like a master is an absolute individual. Of level 8, my spear magic reached level 5. I became the strongest knight of the Empire. Level 4 is only one level lower. At the untested B rank level, there are a few things I must complete beforehand. It's not too difficult, but I don't have time. With the present situation, implanting mana can be very difficult. The Iron Rod spoke, cutting off Joshua's thoughts. I will be with you soon. You can use as much mana as you want with no consequences. Hearing this, Joshua was even more astonished. Is that really possible? Pull yourself together. Once you reach supreme authority and start searching for another power, my goal will be. Before the Iron Rod could finish, it faded and disappeared before Joshua's eyes. He lunged forward and shouted, "What, Lukia? What are you trying to say?" "Hey, Lukia." The space disappeared. Joshua returned to the ruined temple, and the Iron Rod in his hand was still there. Lukia. Whenever I'm near Lukia, I can use a little mana. Joshua closed his eyes and thought. The mana implanting method can be found somewhere on this continent. The only thing I have remembering Lukia's words. Whether you can summon it or not, at least a sufficient amount to defend yourself. That is, level 1 magic, to use spear magic. Level 1, step 1. Concentrate mana at a specific point and thrust forward with explosive power. Joshua swung the Iron Rod and practiced a few moves. A blue light enveloped him. I did it great, I can do it. Rays of light shot out everywhere surrounding Joshua. A beam of light shot up high and then exploded. This is just the beginning. Caesar Van Britten. I will become stronger and take everything from you. In the reception room of Duke Agnes, the butler coughed lightly to signal Duke Agnes's arrival. A look of surprise appeared on the Duke's face. We have some strange guests. The girl with red hair in an evening gown curtsied and greeted him. It is a great honor to meet you, Duke. She is Cheryl, the beloved daughter of the Fonte house. Cheryl, why are you so late, Duke? Agnes asked her. Count Cox, the head of the Fonte family, hurriedly stepped forward to explain. It is my fault. Duke Lady Cheryl is a bit hot-headed. Therefore, we took quite some time to explain. Agnes said that he didn't need to apologize. Meeting him now was very appropriate. Count Cox is the head of the Fonte family. All the money in this family goes through his hands. He stood before Agnes, bowing and scraping. It is a great honor to hear you say so. Agnes spoke up. If you have apologized, then why not devote yourself to my family? The red-haired girl said angrily, Duke, you are still as ill-tempered as ever. How can you steal an important member of my family like that? Agnes chuckled softly. That's the Cheryl I know. When you performed the ceremony with me, I thought it wasn't the Cheryl I knew. Cheryl rested her chin on her hand and said, I heard that Babel will become a C-rank knight, is that right? I was thinking about when I should start recruiting a husband. Count Cox heard this and shouted, My lady, those words are too outrageous. He bowed his head low before Agnes. My apologies, Duke. The young lady is still immature. Agnes still acted as if it was fine and said she was just acting her age, then turned to a handsome man, next to whom was a gentle-looking girl. My apologies, Foncel, I forgot you were still here. That handsome man was Count Foncel. Jin Foncel, and the green-haired girl beside him was Iselin Jin. Rebecca. Iselin performed a royal salute to Duke Agnes. I am very honored to meet you, Duke. Lady Cheryl frowned, looking at Iselin. Why is she here? Despite Count Cox beside her, reminding her to maintain her composure, Cheryl suddenly burst out laughing. Ah, that's right, I heard that the concubine's son defeated 3 soldiers. I don't know if that's true. Count Cox couldn't stand it and shouted in her face, My lady, please be discreet. Cox, did I say anything wrong? I was just curious, so I asked. She pouted at Count Cox if you ask about things that haven't been confirmed. The Duke's close attendant spoke up, interrupting. He is right. Princess, it's just an unconfirmed rumor. Not only that young Master Joshua was born with a weak body, the young master is also cursed by mana, so how could he defeat those 3 soldiers? Duke Foncel was extremely surprised, really is young Master Joshua cursed by mana. Aislinn remained silent, saying nothing. It seemed she was thinking about something. Duke Agnes looked towards Foncel. You've come at the right time. Could you take care of that child for me? What, aren't you training the 5th-rank mages in the Empire? You are surely more sensitive to mana than a knight like me. Please look after the child. Foncel thought to himself, this is my chance to score points with Duke Agnes. He seemed to reluctantly bow. Yes, I will take care of him. The attendant Chiffon suddenly spoke up. Duke, I venture to ask, may I go check on young Master Joshua's condition? What do you mean? Before you leave the capital, shouldn't we confirm whether young Master Joshua is truly afflicted by the mana curse? We can confirm if that rumor is true. Chiffon, why do you have that intention? Once it's confirmed, I will assign suitable knights to monitor him. Agnes narrowed his eyes at the attendant. You're calling for knights too, just for a 9-year-old brat. Chiffon hurriedly explained to the Duke, if he has power. As the rumors say, it's best we prepare as soon as possible. I will assign a suitable person for this job. His eyes lit up. I am sure I will be very satisfied with my choice. In Chiffon's office, the Knight Cain was reporting to Chiffon about young Master Joshua's situation. I have received your report. Cain, you said there was a conflict. Yes, that's right. According to the law, you should have brought them to trial, shouldn't you? Wasn't that too hasty? Cain bowed his head slightly, placing his hand on his chest. That group intentionally harmed the Duke's wife. Chiffon shot up and slammed his hand on the table. What did you say? Are your words true? Chiffon's teeth gritted together in anger. How dare they do that to Lady Vanessa? Cain looked up at him. It wasn't Vanessa, but Lucica. Lucica is that, yes, the Duke's concubine. Chiffon sat down and sighed. You mean those two were crippled by a maid? Lady Lucica is also officially considered the Duke's wife. She is not someone lowly soldiers can touch. The way they acted was as if they were challenging and insulting the Duke. If I were them, I would be ready to confess and accept punishment, Cain said with integrity. Chiffon rested his chin on his hand and continued to sigh. All right, we will let this matter go. This time I have a task for you. Cain stood up straight and serious. I am ready to receive orders. Cain, from today on, you will serve young Master Joshua. Cain was stunned with surprise. What fight young Master Joshua? Chiffon began to muse. That's right. Due to recent incidents, we must confirm if young Master Joshua is afflicted by the mana curse. He could be one cursed by mana. But the Duke doesn't accept that if we continue to let this be, he will be a stumbling block for young Master Babel. Do you think young Master Babel will lose to him? Chiffon slammed his fist on the table. Cain, don't talk nonsense. Young Master Babel is a one-of-a-kind genius. Do you think someone like young Master Babel would avoid that stumbling block? Cain didn't answer. He started thinking about Joshua. A rock. That child, in my eyes, is like a meteorite piercing the sky and crashing to the earth. Chiffon instructed Cain. The story of you fighting young Master Joshua will be kept secret. Inject a small amount of mana into Joshua. If he is one cursed by mana, he will not accept mana, and mana is like a poison to the cursed. If mana flows into his body, ensure he cannot live for more than 10 days. Cain's face turned pale. He thought to himself, I knew he was on young Master Babel's side, but I never expected him to go this far. If you understand my words, then wait at the training ground. The Duke and the Count will be there. Yes, my lord. At the training ground? Cain gripped his sword tightly. He began to think again. Even if it's an order from a superior, I don't want to harm young Master Joshua because I've decided to protect him. Joshua approached Cain from a distance. You are Cain, right, young master? I heard you will be my opponent. Yes, it seems the Duke wants me to have a match with you to test your abilities. Is that all? The Duke allows you to do that? Joshua thought. It seems he realized I wasn't using my full strength. All right then. I'll take you all on, Cain continued. You don't need to worry because I have no intention of fighting you. You have no intention of fighting me. How ridiculous are you looking down on me? Young master. That is, Cain stammered, unable to answer. Although you chose the right master, you want to serve. So do I. I also have standards for choosing who serves me. And I have no reason to choose someone weak and mediocre. Joshua looked straight at Cain. If you want to see who I am, then do your best. Your sword must be drawn, and you must fight with all your might. Duke Agnes had arrived and was approaching. It seems you are both here. Have you two introduced yourselves to each other? Cain hurriedly put his hand on his chest. An honor to meet you, Duke. Chiffon looked at Joshua, who was still standing there without saluting, and thought, he's still as rude to the Duke as ever. Suddenly, Joshua knelt on one knee and placed his hand on his chest. Joshua von Agnes is honored to meet you, Duke. Chiffon gritted his teeth, unable to speak. The Duke's expression relaxed. I don't remember teaching you etiquette. You did well. I just learned it from someone else. You've heard, haven't you, yes? You will test my strength. Chiffon stepped forward to remind him. Young Master Joshua seems to have a misunderstanding. This is not a test. The Duke is just concerned about you. We're doing this only to find out your less developed skills to plan suitable training. Joshua thought to himself, meaning you want to find my weakness, right? That's why he wants to use this test to kill me. Are you ready? The Duke looked at Cain. He trembled slightly. Ready to receive your orders. Cain, it seems you have a misunderstanding. The one fighting Joshua is not you, but Babel. Young Master Babel entered the training ground emanating a royal aura. I, Joshua's older brother, will help him with all my might. My beloved younger brother Babel's eyes emanated a murderous aura as he looked at Joshua. Joshua gritted his teeth and cursed silently. That dog Babel. Because this is a practice match. We will not use real swords. Instead, we'll use wooden swords for training. Yes. As soon as Agnes finished speaking, Babel grabbed a sword from the rack and pointed it at Joshua. Joshua gritted his teeth, his eyes shining with hatred. Babel, Chiffon, you all want me dead, so you created this charade. But it's not that easy. So Big Brother here will show you my performance. Joshua stomped his foot on the ground. He grabbed the wooden stick. I only need this one. Princess Cheryl burst out laughing. He has a real sense of humor. Count Cox still maintained his job of reminding her of her lack of grace, Princess. Why say that Duke Agnes's face soured a little? Chiffon stepped forward hastily. This is not something to be joked about. What will you do with that wooden stick? Duke Agnes stopped him and asked Joshua seriously. Yes, Joshua answered confidently. The Duke said nothing, turning back to remind Chiffon. All right, show the guests to their seats. Yes, I understand. Agnes looked towards Babel. Nothing more to say, Babel, you are not to use mana. You don't need to worry, Babel thought to himself. Fighting this brat, do I need to use mana? What a waste. Cain stood watching Joshua from afar. Young Master Joshua, what are you thinking? Babel looked at Joshua challengingly. You think you can block my sword strike with that wooden stick? Well, I think you're better suited for the role of a manure scooper, you piece of trash. The Duke spoke. Now begin. Now begin. Babel swung his sword and rushed to attack Joshua, but was immediately met by Joshua's swinging wooden stick, causing him to miss his strike. It seems you've learned a few tricks to mess with me, huh? Think you can get past me? Joshua looked at him and silently assessed him. Although he's a C-rank knight, he only has speed. His mind is still immature. He swung his staff and struck Babel's arm directly. He shouted, You bastard! You dare, a concubine's son, dares to challenge me? You dare! Right after Joshua gave him another staff blow to the stomach. Joshua maintained a serious and focused expression from beginning to end. Babel's whole body trembled. A scumbag like you dares. Joshua silently scorned him. You endure well, Babel. Now keep your distance. Babel shouted in anger. You should go back to where you belong, you dog. He began to activate his mana. Joshua was a little worried. Mana at that distance, how dangerous. Duke Agnes shouted Babel stop. A bright light flared, and a terrifying explosion erupted. Babel's wooden sword broke in half and flew a kilometer away. Everyone around was stunned. What is this? That stream of mana. Babel growled, looking at Joshua, probably feeling very bitter. Lies. This bastard, does he really have mana? Thinking back to when Duke Agnes spoke to Joshua, I will await your results. He became even more furious, more bitter than eating chili unbelievable. He shouted and drew his sword. Rushing towards young Master Joshua, I will not accept someone like you. The heir must be me. Joshua gripped his staff tightly, ready to fight Babel. He thought back to his past life. Anyway, in 10 years, the title of Duke will disappear after the Empire's civil war. If I get support from behind from now on, this will help my plan advance a few more steps. I must obtain the title of Duke. Joshua also swung his staff towards Babel. The two of them prepared to fight each other to a pulp. The light from both their powers made everyone cover their eyes. Duke Agnes stood up. Stop. I will not forgive you if you continue to fight like that. Young Master Babel was so resentful he trembled all over. Chiffon from afar was also sweating bullets. Impossible. At only 9 years old, his amount of mana is already so terrifying. This will cause waves in the world. The Duke turned to look at him. Chiffon. Is that enough? Yes, yes. However, I have never seen this type of mana. Count Foncel immediately spoke up. Your Grace, according to my observation, that is definitely mana. Looking at the amount of mana young Master Joshua possesses, it must be much more than young Master Babel's. It is a type of mana I have never seen before. The noteworthy point of this type of mana. He hesitated, not continuing. The girl Cheryl was astonished. Wow, so he's a magician. Kane was also endlessly surprised. This formidability, how terrifying. The Duke looked at Joshua. Joshua, only 9 years old. How interesting. Chiffon seemed displeased, but Duke, that stream of mana. Chiffon, do you have anything else to say? Ah, no, my lord. The Duke began to pay attention to Joshua. Joshua, I have something to ask you. Come to my room tonight. Hearing this, Chiffon was so surprised his mouth fell open. Young Master Babel became even angrier. Father has never called anyone into his private room, and yet that bastard, just a manure scooper, gets the special privilege to do that. Joshua's eyes lit up. I understand. Duke Agnes. In the living room, Princess Cheryl jumped up and down on the bed, exclaiming, Cox, isn't it wonderful? Princess, please calm down. Please maintain your decorum. Unbelievable, at only 9 years old, he's already a magician. Unbelievable, right? All right, I've decided what, my lady. The son of the concubine. Joshua is his name, right? The girl began to show a calculating expression on her face. He will be mine. The sky cast golden sunbeams down on the magnificent castle. In a room, Chiffon was kneeling before a woman in a white dress. She had a noble aura, her face cold. As she gave him a slap, Chiffon, say that again. What happened to Babel? She is the wife of Duke Agnes. Vanessa Van Agnes, sister of King Marcus. Chiffon hesitated before answering. Young Master Babel lost to Joshua. Lady Vanessa's face was extremely angry. How could that be? Then she swung her hand and stroked Chiffon's cheek. She trembled. That kid knows how to use mana and is stronger than Babel, she asked Chiffon. What did he say? It seems he will take Joshua to the capital to Akkadi, because he has witnessed what Joshua can do. He wants to observe him. No matter what, things will get worse if we don't act quickly. If you had completed your mission properly, things wouldn't have come to this. Please don't worry, Lady Vanessa, I will surely take care of everything. Chiffon trembled as he looked at her. Lady Vanessa asked again. So what's over there? Although this is my thought, it seems Duke Agnes is trying to inform the king that Joshua is a C-rank mana user. You still think he'll do it? Not only did the Duke witness it, but there were also 2 counts who witnessed it. Even if he couldn't use mana, they still pushed him into this test. The test, yes, to be recognized as a C-rank knight. Then one must fight a royal knight and demonstrate the ability to use mana on the battlefield. Is that so? The lady's eyes flashed. It seemed she had thought of something. That kid has to fight a royal knight. Oh my, I must call your uncle. Joshua went to Duke Agnes's room to meet him. It's me, Joshua, come in. He pushed the door and stepped inside. Both of their expressions were extremely serious. Joshua knelt on one knee in a salute. You summoned me. Who are you? Joshua was stunned when the Duke asked that. I am Joshua von Agnes, the Duke sighed. All right, it seems you have changed a lot since I last saw you. It's been a long time since then. Joshua looked up at the Duke. Do you have a prejudice against me? Not at all. Duke. Because you have to worry about the royal family. It's natural that you can't pay attention to me. However, I have a request. Joshua stood up and said to the Duke. The Duke looked at him calmly. A request, an apology. Isn't that thing useless, he thought. In this cruel world, an apology is ineffective. He spoke clearly to the Duke. It's about you taking me to the capital, Akkadi. Are you sure I will take you to the capital? Certain. And why do you think so? Joshua began to analyze for the Duke. There are 2 reasons. One is because Babel is your next successor, but my appearance has affected this matter. I think the best way to prevent family conflict is to send me to another place. The Duke looked thoughtfully at his concubine's son. I see the boy doesn't just possess talent. If only I could have trained the boy sooner. Joshua continued. And the other reason is that you want to possess me, someone who can bring great benefits. If I can develop beyond you, the Agnes family will rise once more. The key point is that even the royal family can't interfere in this matter, I understand. To say such words, you must also know that you possess some degree of ability. I just know that I will not disappoint you. The Duke silently assessed Joshua. Very impressive. Very confident, even standing before me. The Duke asked him again, You mean you found a way to solve the problem? That's right. It's to take me to Akkadi and send me to the academy. The royal children of Avalon from the ages of 10 to 15 must attend the academy in the capital for 6 years. Some, like Babel, will graduate early. The reason why royal families use the academy is as a method to instill royal ideology into the children and simultaneously search for hidden talents. The Duke frowned, looking at Joshua. So as you said, I will take you to the capital with me. I will also visit frequently because my workplace is nearby. Joshua thought. To be taught swordsmanship by Duke Agnes, one of the 5 masters. This is my chance. But Joshua said to the Duke, everything will be fine. Fine, I know you are a master of the longsword, but I use a spear as my main weapon. As he spoke, he pointed to the spear on the rack. A spear. The Duke looked at Joshua in surprise and thought to himself, I was worried when he chose a staff in battle. The Duke unleashed a stream of mana towards Joshua. Why a spear? Joshua staggered as the mana stream spread out and surrounded him. Such a large amount of mana, I can't stand firm. But just as Duke Agnes is confident in his swordsmanship, I am also proud that my spear skills are unmatched. He looked at the Duke with determination. I will show you that those who stand in my way must taste my spear, even if it means I have to face the 9 constellations. The Duke's face turned red. It seemed he was angry. You say you will defeat the 9 constellations, then prove your spear has value. A stream of mana emitted a blue light enveloping them both. Joshua vaguely asked the Duke again, meaning, I will test you myself. Joshua slightly smirked. His eyes lit up. He thought, Duke Agnes is one of the 9 constellations. This is a once-in-a-thousand-years opportunity, the Duke asked him again. Are you satisfied? Yes, but there's one condition. A condition. If I pass your test, I hope you will accept my previous request. All right, if you pass the test, not only will you be allowed to use a spear, but I also promise to grant all your requests. However, if you fail the test, you must follow my requests. I understand. Joshua smiled faintly and thought to himself, his request is surely to go to the academy and learn swordsmanship. That won't happen, because I will show everything I have. At the Duchess's place, a person in a black cloak was chanting into a crystal ball. Inside the ball, a man appeared. The black-cloaked man spoke to the lady. Lady Vanessa, I have prepared everything. All right, she spoke to the man inside the ball. Long time no see. Is everything all right? Of course I am greatly enjoying this luxurious palace. How is the Duke? The lady's expression immediately changed. Actually, something happened here, and I want to ask for your help. Joshua left the Duke's room standing before the large door, thinking, as I expected. The one who has reached the supreme realm, how wonderful. My body is still trembling a little. Young Master Babel approached. Hey Joshua, come out for a bit. Joshua sighed and turned away. Do I have anything to say to you? Wait. Fight me another match. Babel's eyes were completely different from usual. His soul, his passion was reflected in his eyes. He didn't want to lose again. Joshua chuckled softly. Are you sure? The king's palace. The magnificent Cantica Palace stood amidst high mountains so grand that a single glance revealed the royalty of the royal family, the king of the Avalon Empire. Marcus Van Britten sat on the throne with 2 valiant golden dragons carved above it. He looked down at the kneeling subordinate. Really, a shining talent. The Agnes family. Yes, that's right. Does Sister Vanessa have such a child? The attendant hesitated. It seems he is not the son of the Duchess. The king exclaimed in surprise. What could it be, the son of a concubine? The attendant lowered his head. One could say he is the son of a servant in the family. The king's eyes flashed. How interesting. He stood up and began to muse. Babel alone is like a diamond in a pile of pebbles. But it seems Duke Agnes possesses 2 diamonds at the same time. How enviable. The attendant spoke again. The princess also has talent that resonates throughout the country, my lord. That's not true. Recently, some people have inherited the king's talent, but considering the skills they possess, they can't be weaker. The king is destroying those who inherit the king's talent. The current princes are all quite talented, but the king sets excessively high requirements for them, things that are difficult to achieve. Because of that, his demand for talent is quite unreasonable. The king raised his hand to stroke his chin. He seemed to be contemplating. He said, yes, if Duke Agnes hadn't hidden his second son, his skills might be on par with Babel's. The attendant looked up at the king. Actually, there's a rumor that Babel was defeated by that kid. The king was astonished, unable to believe what he had just heard. What defeated is that kid older than Babel? He's only 9 years old, the king silently assessed. A child of only 9 years old possesses talent that makes the entire empire bow. Suddenly, the king burst out laughing. Ha 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 ha, how interesting. Then we must quickly confirm it. The attendant bowed his head again. Yes, that's right. This might be the Agnes family's plan. Requesting to send soldiers to the royal family, I estimate that kid is at the level of a C-rank knight. King Marcus raised an eyebrow, looking interested. C-rank at 9 years old. That's a good thing. How curious. Just how strong is he? The attendant frowned, seeming to worry about something. He thought the emperor wouldn't personally test the energy of a 9-year-old kid, would he? Soon he will have an unimaginable power in his hands. The king spoke. I want to go too. You don't need to waste your energy worrying about such things, but that's so humiliating. I can't do it like a dog waiting with wide eyes for food to appear. Anyway, send one of the princes there. Having an eye for people is one of the talents a king should have. Elsewhere, Joshua and Babel were having a new match. They rushed at each other, ceaseless flashes of light surrounding them. Joshua used his bare hands to fight Babel's sword. Babel's sword had made his hand bleed. He was sent flying by Joshua's punch. Mana is concentrated in that punch. Is this guy that strong Joshua said to him? I can guess what you're thinking. Control your emotions. I will show you what fear is the technique you mocked. What Joshua approached Babel, making him tremble slightly. Babel swung his sword and slashed at Joshua. Don't you underestimate me? The sword hadn't even touched. Joshua, when he was sent flying by a beam of light tumbling over, Babel was not resigned to it. He thought he concentrates mana into one part of his body. Damn it. I don't want to admit it, but this kid is really stronger than me. Joshua approached him, looking at him lying at his feet. Not convinced Joshua, then become stronger. Never forget today, after taking a punch from the one you've always looked down on. Babel glared at Joshua, his eyebrows furrowed. Joshua spoke again. Right now, I just want to end your life, insulting and trampling on my mother, but I'll let it slide this time. In my eyes, you have that ability too, if you don't change that damn attitude. I'll make it so you can never hold a sword for the rest of your life. Joshua's eyes seemed to emit sparks that could burn Babel instantly. Making Babel tremble, Joshua turned away and reminded him, and don't forget today's match. Babel was so angry he started to cry, damn it. The next day at Agnes' palace, Joshua woke up feeling a bit uncomfortable. So tired. It seems I used a lot of mana again yesterday. Although I can control mana after absorbing Lucia, I still suffer side effects. Can my body not handle it? There was a knock on the door from outside. Is Cain here this early? Joshua opened the door and said, You're earlier than me, but he saw the red-haired girl standing outside. He sighed softly. The girl asked him, Hello, you are Joshua von Agnes, correct? Who are you? I am Cheryl de Fonte. I came from the ducal family of Fonte. I heard you are 3 years younger than me. So how should we address each other? Cheryl smiled with her eyes crinkled, as if amused, and continued without hesitation. You can call me sister if you want. It's not convenient to talk standing here. How about we go inside and talk? I have many things I'm curious about you, she said, then lifted her dress intending to enter Joshua's room. He immediately blocked her. Hey, get out, he said, then slammed the door shut, leaving Cheryl outside. Cheryl seemed very disappointed. Just as Joshua went inside, he heard another knock on the door. What the heck? It's early morning, hasn't she left yet? Maybe I should just ignore it. The knocking continued. Joshua started to get annoyed. Doesn't she understand human language? I already told you to get lost. In front of Joshua now. Cain was a bit stunned. Young master, are you busy? I'll come back later. Sorry, I mistook you for someone else. Joshua said to Cain, his face a bit embarrassed. How are things? I've prepared everything, but I still don't understand why you did that. Joshua looked at him and chuckled softly. You just need to listen to my words. When the time is right, you will know Cain. In the training hall, the captains were talking to each other. Hey, Rolchi, where did you sell Gort and El Lloyd? I heard those two were knocked out by Joshua. Is that true? Rolchi's face turned pale. He grimaced. He didn't answer. The others asked again. Look at you. Did someone steal your rice ration book? Those guys bullied Joshua. I wonder if they got infected by that kid. Anyway, who gathered the knights here? I heard it was a knight from the blood chain. Then today's training must be very difficult. A voice echoed from afar. Attention, Knight Cain from the blood chain has arrived. Cain and Joshua entered the training hall from outside. Cain was also carrying a spear, The surroundings began to buzz. What that kid is Joshua. Rolchi's face turned pale. Young Master Joshua, why are you here? Kane looked at the knights and spoke. Today's training will be led by young Master Joshua. He will help everyone. Joshua stepped forward and spoke confidently to everyone. I am Joshua von Agnes, and I have been assigned the task of training all of you. The whole crowd below was astonished, unable to believe what they had just heard. Joshua continued, the knights standing here may one day become the commanders leading the vanguard. To achieve those things, skill is the most important. That is why today I will personally inspect and evaluate your strength. Joshua's eyes grew sharp. All of you come up at once. The crowd below was immediately astonished and began to murmur, what are you sure? Young master, you're joking, right? Kane stood behind and whispered into Joshua's ear. Do we really have to do this, young master? Even if you are their young master, fighting with knights is... The crowd below also began to speak up. He's right, young master. If you continue, you might get hurt, that's right. Although you are our master, doing that is an insult to the knights present here. Joshua gripped the spear in his hand and stepped closer to the knights. Do you really think so? The knight Rolchi trembled. What? No, of course I never had that thought. Joshua's face contorted in anger as he shouted at him, Shut up! After seeing the reactions of the knights here, it seems you still haven't told them what I said. Have you? Rolchi immediately knelt down. I sincerely apologize. Please forgive me, young master. Joshua planted his spear on the ground in front of him. Last time I let it slide. This time don't even think about it. The crime of threatening my mother is enough to put you in a coffin, but I let it go and gave you another chance. But you let that golden opportunity slip away. Do you want your life to end like Lloyd's and Gort's? The other knights continued to murmur. Perhaps that's why Lloyd and Gort aren't here? Did they really die at young Master Joshua's hands? Rolchi clasped his hands and begged Joshua. Please, please, give me one more chance, young master, I beg you. Joshua looked straight at him. There's no such thing as a second chance. But for the pride of a knight of the House of Agnes, I will give you one more chance. Draw your sword. If you defeat me, I will pretend today's events never happened. Rolchi trembled slightly as he looked up at Joshua, thinking, That's right. If I'm going to die that way, I will fight with all my might. He gripped his sword tightly. The enemy is still a child. I can still win. He swung his sword at Joshua. Joshua's eyes lit up. His lips curled into a slight smile. The spear in his hand swung. One blow sent Rolchi flying far away. He crashed into a wall, looking utterly miserable. Kane could do nothing more than bow, but he also wanted Joshua to consider the recent offer, because Kane knew very well that he still had a lot to learn from this young master. Then he turned and left. Watching Kane's back as he left, Joshua suddenly remembered his previous life. At that time, there were also a few people who wanted to be his subordinates, but they were all politely rejected by him, because Joshua wanted to become that person's personal sword. He was afraid that person would be wary of him if he had subordinates, but in the end, Joshua was betrayed by Caesar himself, the person Joshua considered his best friend, and ended up buried in the deep forest. The more he remembered, the more his head throbbed violently. Just then, a voice interrupted his memories. It was an old man, one of Count Agnes's subordinates. He came here to invite Joshua to another party. He heard that and was a bit confused because Joshua had previously said he would not participate in any more parties. The old man heard that and casually said, This is not a party. This meal was personally prepared for you by Lady Vanessa. Your mother, Lucia, is also attending. When Joshua heard that his mother was also participating, his eyes widened as he looked at the old man. A moment later, Joshua opened the door to the room. Inside, there were currently Lady Vanessa Chiffon and Joshua's mother, Lucia. When she saw that he had arrived, she happily called out loudly. Seeing his mother, Joshua also approached to greet her. When Lady Vanessa saw him enter, a light smile appeared on her lips as she said, Come in. So you're Joshua. This is the first time we've met, isn't it? Seeing that he didn't greet anyone, Chiffon spoke up with a warning. After all, in his eyes, Lady Vanessa was the most important person in this room. Hearing this, Joshua glared angrily at Chiffon, making him sweat with fear because Chiffon never expected Joshua would dare to look at him like that. Just then, Lucia also spoke up to remind her son to be polite. Hearing this, Joshua fell silent for a moment. Then he bowed in a noble manner and said, I am Joshua Agnes. My master, from now on I will devote myself to serving you. In the guest room, Princess Cheryl was sulkily hugging her teddy bear. In her mind, the image of Joshua telling her to get lost appeared. Her eyes shimmered, looking on the verge of tears. Count Cox rushed in from the door. "Princess Cheryl, I have urgent news. I heard the royal knights will be here soon." Princess Cheryl dejectedly dropped her head onto the bed. Annoyed, she said to Cox, "I told you to leave me alone." "Princess, is something bothering you? You seem to have been upset about something since this morning. Is something wrong?" The princess turned and shouted at Cox. "Cox, leave me alone. Have you forgotten my father's instructions?" Count Cox laughed awkwardly. I forgot the master's instructions." "Princess." Princess Cheryl looked at him angrily. "Don't forget the purpose of coming here." Cox hurriedly went to the door. Closing the door, he said, "My fault, I'll leave right away." Cox left, and Princess Cheryl sulkily lay back down on the bed. She buried her face in her teddy bear. "It hurts so much I want to see you." It seemed Joshua had made a very deep impression on the princess. In the Duke's office, the Duke sat at his desk looking at Joshua, who was kneeling on one knee on the opposite side. "You punished a knight there." "Yes, that is correct. You know it well, Duke. Those knights spoke ill of and insulted my mother. I acted according to the law and punished them for daring to insult a noble's family." The Duke furrowed his brow in thought. "And I understand that if I were in his position, I would also have beheaded those men with my sword." He said softly, "How shameful." Joshua slowly stood up and said to the Duke, "Are you thinking this is the impulsive act of a teenager who can't control his emotions?" "What do you mean?" Joshua looked straight at Duke Agnes. "Just a few days ago, I was still a kid living in a stable scooping manure every day. Even if you say I have achieved skills beyond imagination, gaining trust is still very difficult." Duke Agnes looked at him puzzled. So then, Joshua clenched his fist. His gaze was direct as he said, "Overwhelming them with power by instilling fear in their hearts. Then they will never dare to threaten me or my mother, and I am certain all the knights will see that I too have the Duke's blood." Duke Agnes was pensive, raising his hand to stroke his beard. "I understand your meaning," saying that the Duke stood up. "Now let's put that aside and prepare to go. We will assess your mana. The royal knights should be arriving soon. You must have heard the news already, right?" Joshua bowed slightly, his gaze unwavering as he said, "Yes, I will go and prepare." Duke Agnes's first knight commander, Goldmane Armstrong, wore a golden lion face on his left shoulder. He used one hand to shield his face from the sun and exclaimed, "How very interesting. Our Duke is truly fortunate to have two sons who are both young C-rank knights." Chiffon, standing beside him, said with a displeased look, "Anyway, one of them is the son of a concubine. So what's so great about that?" Armstrong sneered, looking at Chiffon with half-lidded eyes. "You're worried your position will be shaken when you see young Master Babel defeated by young Master Joshua, aren't you?" Chiffon clenched his fists in anger, turning to glare at Armstrong. "What? Where did you hear that?" The Duke's voice cut through their argument. "The royal knights are about to arrive and you're still standing there arguing." They both hurriedly placed their hands on their chests and bowed, "Greetings, Duke." Armstrong silently assessed Joshua as he saw him standing next to the Duke. "Is that young Master Joshua?" "He looks weak." Joshua suddenly said, "They're here what?" A procession of carriages with knights in iron armor entered the Duke's castle. Chiffon was surprised to see a procession of people and horses. Is someone else coming? Why did the royal knights bring an entire battalion? The gilded carriage stopped. A handsome young man with golden hair exuding a noble aura stepped out of the carriage. "So this is Duke Agnes, one of the 9 constellations." The Duke seemed surprised to see this person. "You are the 4th prince." Joshua looked at the young man. His eyes filled with resentment. His lips were pressed tightly together. He silently lamented. "The 4th prince, Caesar Van Britten. I didn't expect this day to come so soon." A knight fell after taking a full blow, trembling and begging. "I'm sorry, Sir Joker, please stop." Despite his pleas, he swung his sword decisively with one hand, his face showing no mercy. "A weakling like you dares to challenge me. This man is Joker, the captain of the Royal Knights." Suddenly, a voice came from behind him. "I knew you'd be here." He instinctively turned around. The person continued, "If you keep bullying the newcomers like this, who would dare to join the Royal Knights anymore? The source of power still emanated from him. I can't stand by and watch them act like knights, just because they can use a little mana. Why are you here? He sneered. The person slowly revealed himself from behind the blue light. There are a few tasks from Lady Vanessa. You must undertake them. Returning to reality. The four of them, Joshua, the Duke Chiffon, and Commander Goldmane Armstrong, stood solemnly before the Royal Knights. Among the Royal Knights, of course, the Commander Joker, whom I introduced a few seconds ago, could not be missing. So I just need to make sure that guy. The fourth prince spoke. I presume that is the rumored young Master Joshua. Our protagonist, despite being very angry, did not show his discomfort. Caesar. That bastard. The man in the hat, standing next to the fourth prince, spoke. Young Master Joshua, please watch your attitude. You are in the presence of the prince. At this reprimand, Joshua smirked. How ridiculous, there can't be two suns in the sky of the empire. Unlike his words, the only person a knight shows respect to, without being reminded, is the emperor. What reason is there for me to pay attention to the fourth prince, whose identity is unclear? At Joshua's reply, the fourth prince still smiled without showing any annoyance. The knight stepped forward, and the red-haired man spoke. His hand threateningly reached for the sword at his hip, ready in a fighting stance. It seems this kid can't control himself anymore. He raised his voice. You're just a bastard who scoops horse manure. He drew his sword. He is Valmont Dawn, Braun, the 9th Knight and Vice-Captain of the Royal Knights. Did you fall into a manure barrel and go mad? He snapped with a mocking tone. Immediately, Commander Goldmane Armstrong also did not yield, drawing his sword ready to protect his young master. The red-haired man saw this and continued to speak. I would understand if he were Duke Agnes, but why must you defend a lowly person like him? He asked Commander Goldmane Armstrong. Young Master Joshua is also a part of the Agnes family, he replied decisively. The atmosphere grew increasingly tense. It was as if the two were about to explode into a fight. However, at that moment, Duke Agnes suddenly spoke, breaking the tension. You are in the presence of the prince. Do you wish to die? The red-haired man laughed it off, trembling slightly. That is one of the 9 constellations, Duke Aiden von Agnes. This terrifying pressure. Then the Duke turned to Joshua and reprimanded him. You are the one who behaved improperly. Apologize to the prince at once, the Duke commanded. The fourth prince intervened. It's all right. He is not wrong. The man in the hat beside him snapped. Prince, this is an event where everyone will be paying attention to you. If things go wrong because of this, the royal family may lose its authority. The prince looked at him and replied, I am only being mocked for my own pride, and just because I am the fourth prince, an incompetent person. And just as he said, the prince walked forward. The only one worthy of being respected by the knights can only be Emperor Avalon. The prince stood before Joshua. I'm fine. So please don't pay attention to the knights from earlier. Furthermore, knights should prove they can protect others within their abilities, the prince said with a smile. I'm sure he only knows meaningless words, a person who only talks and does nothing to others. These words from the prince would make them think the prince is a magnanimous person, but to our protagonist, the prince's words were just to turn the situation around. But that's all he can do. In this life, everything will change. Our protagonist understands him too well. I will sever your head. That is the best for you. The protagonist thought, I am always ready. Joshua answered directly. The Joker beside him couldn't take it anymore and shouted, Hey, you arrogant one. You are still being rude to the prince until the end. After saying that, he gently turned to the prince and spoke politely. Prince, I have a request that may exceed my authority, but I wish to assess mana ability through a match. He bowed his hand on his chest. I wish to witness it firsthand, the skill that allows him to behave in such a manner. The plan is proceeding as expected. At that request, the prince said, For your safety as well as fairness to me, Sir Joker, you are at B rank, which might be more suitable for him. After receiving the prince's permission, the Joker replied with a murderous smile. Thank you, my lord. In this case, I will do it well regarding the assessment of young Master Joshua's mana. Not long after, at the Agnes family's training ground, both Duke Agnes's side and the Royal Knights were seriously watching the match between Joshua and Joker. Now, are you still planning to deceive everyone around you? The Joker spoke up, his weapon a sword, while our protagonist uses a steel rod. A steel rod? Do you consider this a game? His face could not hide his contempt for his opponent. You look down on others just because everyone around says you have a little talent. You even dare to insult the prince and the royal command, not letting him get complacent, mocking our protagonist. Joshua spoke up. You talk a lot. I guess the royal knights are chosen for their eloquence, right? This statement was like a bucket of cold water thrown at him. With his arrogant personality, I bet he's probably furious. I will make you regret what you said. You know how this competition will go, right? You will fight me, and I will decide whether you can use mana or not. Saying that, he slowly approached Joshua. Before he could attack, our protagonist's steel rod was already pointed straight at him. Joshua counterattacked first. The Joker was on the defensive, just by blocking. He grimaced because Joshua's mana energy was extremely strong. Even so, he couldn't easily admit defeat. He growled, "Even so, it's no different from a toy." Saying that, he swung his sword towards Joshua. "I just need to close the distance to finish you." If this was his strategy, he would surely lose. Because this is what our protagonist wants. Most people, when fighting me, think they can attack by closing the distance. But I have overcome that weakness through long training. Our protagonist smiled with 100% confidence of winning. A direct hit to the head, but the Joker managed to block it. Our protagonist continued to counterattack. Once again, he blocked it. Both fought with all their might, making the match more thrilling than ever. Meanwhile, in the stands, the prince said to the red-haired man, "Impressive. To think he can fight on par with a B-rank knight at this age." The red-haired man sneered in response. "Prince, it may seem that way, but Joker is limiting his ability to C-rank." Saying that, he turned back to watch the match with a thoughtful expression. Their mana cannot be underestimated. Joshua is taking the lead in terms of technique. What is that technique? I've never seen it before. Below in the stands, the Joker was still attacking fiercely. Damn it. If this continues, the match will end. If that happens, Lady Vanessa will sever my head. I have no choice. I can only gamble here. On Joshua's side, he was also attacking fiercely. As expected of a B rank, he was on a completely different level from Babel. My mana is becoming harder to control. My strength and mana are reaching their limits. Joker was almost going insane. He launched a decisive blow at our protagonist. His brow furrowed. The only one who has defeated me so far is Agnes, but I'm faster in this range. Saying that, he launched a thud aiming to end the match. The speed was astonishingly fast, and our protagonist was hit before he could react. He coughed up blood immediately. In the Duke's stands, Commander Goldmane Armstrong shot up, his face filled with worry as he spoke. Duke Joker's mana has surpassed B-rank. Young Master Joshua is in danger. Despite Armstrong's excessive worry, the Duke remained calm and observed the match. Wait and observe. The Joker, after landing a blow, seemed smug, sneering at his opponent. It seems you're not resisting it, but just concentrating mana. But this time it won't be effective. He continued his attack. At this moment, our protagonist was concentrating all his mana into the steel rod. Seeing this, he said, "It's useless to accumulate your mana in that rod." Before he could finish, he rushed at our protagonist with all his strength. In the stands above, the red-haired man shouted, "Joker, what in the world are you doing? Stop immediately." But it was too late. A blue light erupted, shaking the entire training room. Debris flew everywhere, stunning all the witnesses. The red-haired man had just protected the prince while also turning back to watch the situation below. The floor was no longer intact after the collision of the two mana streams. The Joker was pushed back, his face clearly showing his discomfort. What in the world just happened? Our protagonist stood in a ready stance, the weapon in his hand now transformed into a new form. It was no longer an ordinary steel rod. In the previous chapter, we were watching the match between Joshua and Joker. Instead of fighting fairly, the Joker used B-rank skills, injuring our protagonist quite a bit. Then both launched a decisive blow. This resulted in an extremely powerful beam of light. This was Joker's intention. The clash between C-rank mana and a B-rank ultimate sword technique. He would take massive damage after the previous shock, and with that, his mission would be complete. Meanwhile, to block Joker's power, our protagonist Joshua had concentrated all his mana into the steel rod. In his current state, this would be very difficult, but I have no other choice. Obey my command, Lucia. And as you can see, an extremely powerful beam of light appeared, shaking the entire training room. The floor was deformed and neither side was knocked down. It's unknown if it was due to using too much strength, but our protagonist couldn't stop panting. His limbs also began to tremble. The steel rod was now in a new form. At this moment, in the stands above, Chiffon exclaimed in surprise, That's an artifact. For those of you who don't know what an artifact is, simply put, it's a weapon imbued with magic. The fourth prince was also extremely surprised by what was happening, saying, So cool. Has a battle like this satisfied you? The red-haired man didn't understand what his prince was saying. What, sir? Although he still has a long way to go, I can say his skills are very impressive, the prince said. As if understanding the prince's intention, the red-haired man bowed and replied, Yes, I understand. At this point, I see the fourth prince is a master of changing situations. Below, our protagonist asked his opponent, How is it? The joker, puzzled, replied, What? Our protagonist, though still panting, continued, I blocked your attack. The joker grimaced angrily, snapping, I don't know what you did. But this will be the end of you. On the stairs, the red-haired man was descending. He raised his voice. The match ends here, Sir Valmont, the joker exclaimed. The red-haired man looked at our protagonist with a face full of admiration. For someone who can pass the C-rank test and even block Joker's attack, a person with a rank higher than B. Although I have seen Babel von Agnes, the most talented person in the Empire, I'm not this surprised. What is this child hiding? The red-haired man pointed his sword at our protagonist. In the name of God, from this moment on, the son of Duke Agnes, Joshua von Agnes, is officially a C-rank knight, except the Emperor's sword. At those words, our protagonist was silent. He thought, At first I didn't really care about becoming a C-rank knight, but if I do something foolish, it could lead to my end. The atmosphere was silent. Only the sound of the prince's applause could be heard. Our protagonist looked into the distance, thinking to himself, I don't want to show them my weak side. I will definitely make everyone here pay, just like what I had to endure in my past life. Cutting off our protagonist's train of thought, the Duke approached from behind and spoke, Joshua, are you all right? At the Duke's question, our protagonist looked at him with a meaningful expression. I've never seen that face before. To think he looks at me like that. I'm fine, our protagonist said and walked forward. He accepted the sword from Sir Valmont. Clearly under the witness of the Empire, this was unprecedented on the continent. Our protagonist raised the sword high in the air with pride. The birth of the youngest mana user. That night, the Agnes family gathered for a meeting. In Duke Agnes's meeting room, everyone was very serious. Report anything that needs to be noted. Count Vassal of the House of Agnes spoke up. Commander Goldmane Armstrong said, Recently we have received a report that the Exploration Knights have suddenly returned. Count Vassal was a bit surprised. The Yellow Iris Knights have returned so early. Armstrong continued, That's right. For some reason in the Northern Territories, they reported that the number of monsters approaching the villages has doubled. And the main reason they had to return is because black goblins have appeared along with other monsters. The black goblin, even in the Shadow Forest, is considered the strongest, with a strength that can even tear apart the dwarves, famous for their sturdy armor. Even level 4 mages and knights with sword skills higher than B rank have difficulty fighting them. Count Vassal exclaimed, What did you say, Black Goblin? One of the people in the meeting began to discuss that bad. If something like that appears near the town, what can be done to handle them? Amidst the chatter, Duke Agnes spoke up, I will handle this matter myself. Let's move on to the next issue. The Duke looked at Commander Goldmane Armstrong. Yes, Armstrong replied. The second issue concerns the family of the 5 dukes. Armstrong looked at the Duke with a probing gaze. Immediately, the Duke was surprised. The family of the 5 dukes is the Fonte family. The Duke was surprised because this might be the reason Cheryl and Cox were here. Give me a report on that matter after the meeting, the Duke said yes. At this moment, Count Vassal spoke up. If there are any other issues to report, please speak up. Suddenly, Chiffon raised his hand. I have a few things to say about young Master Joshua. Everyone started murmuring again. I heard he surpassed Babel and became the youngest C-rank knight. Another person said, This is good news for the Agnes family. Count Vassal spoke up. Not now. Please be quiet and listen to Commander Chiffon. Chiffon spoke seriously. Young Master Joshua is a forgotten person in the family. The main issue here is that he previously had no mana to do anything, But why can a person suddenly become so proficient and become a C-rank knight? You can't say it's due to innate talent. So what are you trying to suggest, Commander Chiffon? Count Vassal asked. Personally, I think young Master Joshua has borrowed power from some source, and this could endanger our future. If that's not the case, I don't know how else to explain it. At Chiffon's query, Commander Goldmane Armstrong beside him spoke up. Another source. Are you sure this isn't your baseless speculation? At that question, Chiffon did not yield. You saw it with your own eyes. The weapon young Master Joshua used. Can that weapon change its shape and have magic in it? It's an artifact. On top of that, young Master Joshua's weapon is just a steel rod. Chiffon was certain of his speculation. It's impossible for a steel rod to contain such power. When Joker attacked with his final blow, I sensed something like dark energy. Count Vassal interjected. Dark energy. I suppose he can't use dark energy to become stronger. But what's the connection to demons and dark magic? Even though it's a taboo on the continent, I don't think the royal family likes this. Duke Agnes, if this is true, we will all be in trouble. Do you think we should find out the truth first, at these pressing questions? Duke Agnes just bowed his head in silence at this moment. Chiffon spoke again. Yahello is right. We need to find out the truth before it's too late. I suggest we send young Master Joshua somewhere far away from here. Immediately, the door opened. Young Master Joshua slowly walked in. Everyone was surprisingly silent as he passed Chiffon. Joshua didn't forget to glance at Chiffon dark energy. If you're that curious, why don't you check it out for yourself? At Joshua's words, Chiffon showed a little annoyance. What did you just say? Joshua repeated. Why don't you check for yourself whether I really borrowed dark energy by challenging me, or are you afraid? At that challenge, Chiffon's face showed his displeasure, but he remained silent. This brat dares. He challenges me when he has the Duke's support. If there's a mistake, I'll have to pay for my words. If that power is really his, then I will lose. Why are you thinking for so long? Joshua asked confidently. If you are one of the most talented knights in the family, don't you think you should at least be confident after saying those words? Chiffon really couldn't hold back anymore. He stood up abruptly, using his mana power, and growled, Your words are hard to listen to, young Master Joshua. Everyone in the meeting was intimidated by the stream of power emanating from Chiffon. Calm down, Commander Chiffon. You are in the presence of Duke Agnes. The Duke spoke, and both of them stopped Chiffon. There's something you may have forgotten. Don't you remember who assessed Joshua's mana? Commander Goldmane Armstrong spoke up. It was the Royal Knight's mage. If the boy borrowed power from demons, everyone there would have noticed. The Duke said, and with that, Joshua's matter is resolved. Does anyone disagree with this? However, Joshua being like this doesn't mean everything is resolved. There are a few things I need to verify, the Duke said with a serious face. Your sudden increase in strength has not only surprised everyone here, but me as well. So to explain your abilities, we will go to the Shadow Forest. Everyone started murmuring again. You're going into the Shadow Forest yourself. Such matters should be left to the knights. That's right. There's no need to put yourself in danger like that. Why don't you keep yourself safe since you're about to go to the capital Akkadi, while everyone had their own opinions? Commander Armstrong spoke up. I agree with the Count. If anything happens to you. The Duke immediately spoke up. Who do you think I am? Commander Armstrong fell silent for having spoken out of turn. The Duke continued. When the Shadow Forest is cleared, I plan to take Joshua to the Royal Academy in the capital. No matter what you suspect, Joshua's talent is an undeniable fact. According to the rules of the Agnes family, he is also given a fair chance. Chiffon was still not resigned to that decision. Damn it. If that brat's talent returns after honing his skills at the Royal Academy, then no one can touch him. Sir Babel might be pushed out of the succession race. I need to think of a reason to keep him here. No, I need to eliminate him. At this moment, Joshua spoke up. Duke, I have a request. What is it? The Duke asked. I want to go to the capital with my mother. Chiffon snapped. That's not possible. Duchess Vanessa will not let it slide if you bring Lucia to the capital. What will happen to me if she doesn't let it slide? Joshua retorted to Chiffon, You're saying the Duke needs her permission for this trivial matter. At this questioning, Chiffon froze. If I don't agree, it will sound like I don't respect the Duke. I can't let this go. I'm being spun around by that brat to avoid being cornered. Chiffon justified his purpose, Duke. I'm just worried that if this gets out, you and Lucia will be affected. Before he could finish, the Duke spoke up. Forget about that, saying that he turned to Joshua. I grant you permission to bring Lucia along. Thank you, my lord. Joshua bowed his hand on his chest. Duke Agnes looked at Joshua with pride, thinking to himself, just as I thought, he's not an ordinary child. How long has it been since I felt this way? Even Babel doesn't make me feel this way. To end this tense meeting, the Duke asked, does anyone else have an opinion on this matter? Everyone agreed with the Duke's opinion. Even Chiffon had to obey as you wish, so that matter is settled. The Duke stood up and looked at Commander Armstrong. Armstrong, come to my room and bring the knights you sent, when you have finished arranging the report on the Fonte family, as you command. Armstrong bowed in response. Before leaving, the Duke added, Joshua, you will come too. Suddenly the door opened again. Young Master Babel Chiffon spoke as he approached the Duke. Babel von Agnes greets you, Duke. Babel saluted the Duke. You finally decided to come. After all this time of not showing up, the Duke seemed to reprimand, but was not very surprised. I'm sorry I needed time to think about myself, Babel replied. Babel has also changed. His energy has changed. The Duke silently assessed him. This feeling isn't bad. All right, you must be here for a reason. What is it? The Duke asked. Babel looked at Joshua. Joshua, do you have something to say to me? Joshua asked again. Joshua chose to be angry with Chiffon again. Joshua young. Master Babel is at a higher level than you, so show some respect. At Chiffon's excessive harshness, Joshua retorted, Are you Babel's spokesperson or something? This left Chiffon speechless. What Chiffon exclaimed, I've noticed for a while, but you keep acting like Babel's subordinate. The only master you should serve is Duke Agnes. In reality, there is always a boundary between a knight and a master. Even a knight, no matter how talented, if they cross that boundary, they will be exiled. At Joshua's question, Chiffon replied with annoyance, What are you talking about? I'm just helping you adjust your etiquette to be appropriate. Anyone can stand at the top if they have the skills. If you want to express your opinion, you should improve your skills more. Isn't that the law of the Duke's family? This statement from Joshua cut deep into Chiffon's heart. Making it hard for him to swallow his anger, Babel spoke up. I'm fine. Sir Chiffon, he's not wrong. Meanwhile, the Duke stood outside observing. This arrogance and boasting are different from before. Finally, the look of a knight has appeared. Improve yourself. I will take that opinion myself. I will reach even higher, Babel said to Joshua. Don't think I will give up in despair. His gaze completely changed in a short time. Joshua thought to himself, a smile forming on his face. Joshua replied, I know. Babel turned to the Duke. Duke, from this moment on, I will officially renounce my right to inherit the Agnes family's succession. Everyone in the meeting room was surprised, exclaiming, Renounce the inheritance. You're renouncing it yourself. Young Master Babel, Count Anheo asked at Babel's declaration. The Duke asked, Have you lost all confidence because of your younger brother's talent? Babel replied decisively, No, I just want to abide by the laws of the House of Angus and compete honestly and fairly. I will think about it, the Duke said. My request has been accepted by the Duke. Babel bowed his head. Thank you, Duke. Saying that the Duke walked out, the meeting ends here. The Duke gave a rare smile as he left the meeting room. Slowly but surely there will be changes. I wonder how things will change. But I think it's not bad. In Vanessa's room, a woman was covering her face. She laughed bitterly after hearing Chiffon's report. Ha ha, Babel renounced his inheritance. And that brat is taking Lucia to the capital. Yes, it's all true, Chiffon replied. The woman was furious, sweeping a bottle of wine off the table. Please calm down. Chiffon said I lost my composure when I heard about it. My uncle's work has failed, and I came to you. Do you know Babel is everything to me? The woman covered her face, showing a look of helplessness with a hint of anger. Chiffon beside her could only bow his head and say, Yes. Of course I was there. I should have stopped him by any means. I'm sorry. The woman glanced at Chiffon and spoke, No, Chiffon. I know better than anyone that Babel is as stubborn as his father. You did nothing wrong. Suddenly the woman's expression changed. However, in case that brat does anything to affect Babel's power, then I will tell my husband all these secrets. Her eyes were somewhat threatening. Chiffon replied, flustered. Please don't worry about that. Such a thing will not happen again. All right, about that child, does he have a plan? The Duke plans to take him to the Lock Palace? The Lock Palace, the woman asked with a skeptical look. It's in the far north and it takes 2 days to get there. At that query, Chiffon spoke up. The monsters from the Shadow Forest are running rampant. Therefore, the Duke plans to go and Lloyd them himself. The woman continued to ask. So the brat and Lucia will set off for the capital after they return. Most likely. Chiffon replied. So before they depart, do they want to have a meal with me? The woman gave a sinister smile, perhaps plotting something, because it might be their first and last meeting. Everyone was busy preparing for the trip. A person looked at a knight in armor and said, "The knights here to assess mana are also leaving today." One person snapped, "Hey, focus! We're also departing today." Ah, yes, understood. Everyone seems very busy. The Agnes family estate has also become more lively. Get the horses ready. Now hey, help is needed here. I'll be right there. Meanwhile, our protagonist showed no hurry looking at the ring on his hand. Thinking back to the scene when meeting Duke Agnes, we will go to Akkadi right after destroying the monsters in the Shadow Forest. Before that, you must renounce the Agnes name, the Duke said. Our protagonist was surprised. What? The Duke continued. Instead, I will give you a gift. The Duke gently placed a box on the table, pushing it towards our protagonist. During an assistance to the magic tower, I received this magic ring as a thank you, the ring of the master of the magic tower. It is one of the weapons imbued with magic that he himself created. It allows the user to use armor as soon as they charge mana into the ring. You will know how to use it when you charge mana into it, the Duke added. Our protagonist innocently asked, Isn't this only given to the heir? At that question, the Duke's face was stern. Don't misunderstand me, I'm only lending it to you because it's something discarded in the warehouse. That's not all. Is there another reason? Our protagonist asked. The moment you use the ring, your entire body will be covered in a layer of armor containing mana. That armor has the family crest on it. It will protect you from nuisances and help you hide your identity. I hate it most when others take what belongs to me. On the other hand, you will be the heir of an unknown noble family. Choose a suitable name for yourself. Although the Duke had answered our protagonist's queries. Deep down, our protagonist Joshua still believed that the Duke giving him the ring must have a reason. This is to say, don't cause trouble for the Agnes family. It's easy to use for high-ranking people like the Prince of the Empire. I hate both of them. Suddenly, the Duke called Joshua. Yes. Do you hate me? The Duke asked. At this question, our protagonist was also unsure. I never expected anything from the Duke. It was too sudden to see his departure. At the Empire's civil war that is about to take place in 10 years, if I really think about it, he abandoned my mother and me. And because of that, my mother passed away. Because the number of times I met him in my past life was so few I didn't need to count. I've forgotten all my resentment towards him. People often say, time is a great healer. Perhaps that relationship never existed between us. Our protagonist looked at the ring on his hand and smiled. Is there something amusing, young Master Joshua? The prince asked. I should call you Sir Joshua now, right? At that question, our protagonist retorted, What do you mean? You'll be going to Akkadi after completing your mission in the Shadow Forest, right? Come and see me when you get to Akkadi. I will surely help Joshua. The prince said confidently. You will help me? Our protagonist asked. Yes, of course. The royal family can recommend knights that will protect you from other knights. They can become official knights without having to take the annual assessment exam, and they will receive special benefits when they accept that they are not required to serve for 10 years. Furthermore, if Joshua wishes, there's no problem with you using as many royal knights as you want before you leave. Please understand that this offer is a kindness I extend to you. Saying that, the fourth prince didn't forget to give a very friendly smile. However, how could he deceive our protagonist? That laughter was a mix of deceit and hypocrisy. How disgusting, Joshua thought to himself. If it weren't for those people behind him, I would have stabbed a hole through his head and mouth with Lucia. However, I must join the Royal Knights to meet my best friend from my past life. I need to join the Royal Knights and become a battalion commander to infiltrate the royal family's secret vault. My friend is sleeping there. But for now, I need to solve this problem. At that offer, our protagonist calmly replied, I will think about it. I am busy, then I'll be going. The red-haired man from behind spoke up. If he were as polite as his skills, he could get promoted quickly. At his words, the fourth prince spoke, "Don't be like that. We should return Valmont. In the end, he will fall into our hands anyway." Saying that, they both walked away. "Caesar, this time, I will not become your daughter. This time it will be your turn." Our protagonist's face was full of the confidence of someone who holds victory in their hands. Thanks to Duke Agnes's leadership, the Shadow Forest expedition team was quickly organized. The members of the expedition were quite simple and were led by the Duke of the Empire. It only consisted of one blood chain, a level 4 mage Armand, a devilman, and 100 others. Besides Babel and Joshua. This Babel guy, why does he keep staring at me? Our protagonist riding a horse showed some discomfort. Over 100 people on horseback passed through the city gate one by one. A voice rang out. "Everyone halt. Salute the Duke." "Sir." A soldier, his hand on his chest, showed his loyalty before the army prepared to set off on their mission. Lock Castle is adjacent to the Shadow Forest. The Duke was controlling his warhorse. "Whoa! Calm down. Make it stop." The Duke looked at the soldier and said, "It's been a while, Robin." Robin, in a solemn posture, saluted the Duke. Robin, the Duke's former high-ranking knight, a member of the Clover Knights, and someone who had served the Duke for a very long time. "I've always felt guilty towards you. I left you in this barren land after you retired." The Duke dismounted and said, this made Ronan flustered, "Don't say that. I am very honored to serve you even after retiring. And I told you that I wanted to spend time with my family." At Robin's reply, the Duke said, "Thank you for saying so with deep appreciation for this warrior." Suddenly, 2 people stepped out of the castle. "Oh, my Duke. You've finally arrived. I am extremely moved to see the Duke personally come here to support us." "Greetings, Duke." The girl beside him spoke. The man who stepped out was Viscount Vigo, the Lord, and a relative of Vanessa. The girl beside him was Ina, Viscount Vigo's beloved daughter. At this welcome, Duke Agnes seemed quite annoyed, thinking to himself, "Humph, what a headache. I should have gone to the forest immediately." Viscount Vigo turned to reprimand the old soldier. Robin, have you grown so old that you've forgotten? You must report to me immediately when the Duke arrives." At this baseless reprimand, Robin could only bow and apologize. "I am sorry, my lord." "Not letting it go." "Lord," Vigo continued, "I thought your skills would be better than your age. How will you take responsibility for the safety of this place?" Robin was silent, not answering. The Duke spoke up to break the atmosphere. "Vigo, it seems you have adapted to this place. You seem to have gained weight every time I see you." At that question, the Viscount was a bit startled and exclaimed, "Oh, Duke!" Then he put on a very nonchalant expression. "How embarrassing. It's not that this is because you have taken such good care of me." What the heck, is he stupid or is his face just too thick, our protagonist thought to himself. In that situation, he suddenly changed the subject to Babel. "Oh, my young master. Babel is here too. You've gotten even more handsome than before. Even I, who know nothing about swordsmanship, can feel your spirit." "It's been quite a while," Uncle Babel replied. Then he chuckled. "It seems a master will soon be born in this ducal family. Ha ha ha." His smile was so fake, he rubbed his hands together and then looked at our protagonist Joshua. "And who is this?" he asked. Chiffon spoke up. "That is, young master Joshua Viscount." "Vigo, young master Joshua." He asked again in surprise. "He is the Duke's second son," he stammered, repeating, "the second son." Then he turned to look at the Duke again, awkwardly scratching his head. "Please excuse my rudeness. Ah ha ha. I must go and ask again about what I heard. Since when did Vanessa get pregnant with another child?" Chiffon beside him whispered, "Viscount Vigo, he is not Vanessa's son." At this point, I think he should find a hole to crawl into and still wouldn't escape the embarrassment. "What? How unexpected. I didn't expect such a thing." His face was extremely unsightly. Instead of changing the subject, he continued to ask, "So which noble bloodline does our young master possess?" Chiffon beside him was also at his wits' end with him, and answered helplessly, "She does not come from a noble family." "Ah, is that so?" was the remark he uttered as he looked at our protagonist. Then his face suddenly changed, staring at Joshua. "You filthy pig, you dirty brat." At those words, our protagonist was a bit annoyed. Everyone was just silent. The Duke sighed and spoke. "That's enough greeting. Is there any urgent matter to attend to?" He replied. "Nothing serious. We have prepared a feast. Why don't we rest for a bit?" Immediately the Duke said, showing his displeasure. Perhaps that's not what he wanted to hear. My knights are not that weak. If they needed rest, they have rested enough on the way here. Then the Duke looked at his soldiers and asked, "Does anyone need to rest? Anyone?" Everyone was silent in unison. "No, sir, then we go." Saying that, the Duke turned and walked away. Suddenly Viscount Vigo spoke up. "Duke Agnes, I also want to go with you." He changed his expression with a look of high determination. "Although I cannot help much in the battle, I am a Viscount. To just stand by and watch, I believe all my knights and men are the same." His soldiers shouted in unison, "That's right, we want to go with you for the honor of working for you, Duke." At that spirit, the Duke looked at Viscount Vigo and said, "What will you do with Ina? Do you intend to leave the girl alone?" He replied with a very proud expression, "Oh, you don't need to worry about that. My daughter can be useful, even if only a little." At her father's praise, the girl beside him could not hide her joy. Excited, the Duke asked again, "You want your child to undertake this dangerous journey?" Without letting her father answer, the girl spoke up, "I want to go with you, sir. Please look at this." Saying that, she revealed her ability. A spirit appeared and sat on her shoulder. This made a soldier exclaim in surprise, "Is that a spirit?" At that question, the Viscount replied with a not at all humble expression, "Recently we discovered that my daughter can summon spirits. A spirit is similar to magic. It's an ability only the chosen can use. No. If you consider the number of spirit summoners, it's even fewer than magicians. The empires only have about 100 low-level spirit summoners. I didn't expect to see a spirit summoner here," our protagonist observed intently. Babel, standing beside him, also stared at her. "I don't know any spirit summoner named Ina, but that child looks very familiar. Have I met her somewhere?" Joshua thought to himself. "All right, then let's get ready to depart." The Duke spoke up. "However, the Bloodchain Knight will lead. The soldiers of Locke will be at the rear and the rest will be in the middle." "I understand. Thank you very much, Duke." The Viscount and his daughter couldn't hide their joy. "Then let's go." The Duke walked away deep in thought. If I get a spirit summoner, it's not a loss. The Viscount's daughter seems to have a crush on young Master Babel. Don't you think everyone I see her smiling at the young master all the time? This couple looks cute. Meanwhile, our protagonist couldn't take his eyes off that girl. Since we will be going with her, I should slowly think about it. If she affects my plan, I will keep an eye on her. Viscount Vigo called out to Joshua, "Hey you, I'll be watching you." Is he threatening our protagonist? Then one day, not far off, perhaps he will regret that. The scene shifts to the throne of the King of Avalon. That is what happened. The man sitting on the throne asked, his hand propping up his chin. Interesting, isn't it? His talent is real. He even blocked Joker's attack, even commanding a battle. "Yes," the hooded man replied. "Evergrande, what do you think of this?" he asked. "I want to hear your opinion as the great magician of the Empire." The hooded man replied, "But you said it's hard to guess the boy's ability because knights and magicians use mana differently in their mana cores. I want a general opinion," he said. "How talented is that brat?" At that question, the hooded man replied, "Without evidence, it's hard for me to explain. For example, comparing him to the royal knights." At that example, the person on the throne looked interested. "Good," the hooded man said. "A few days ago, Sir Valmont and I, although we didn't fight. If we had to fight one-on-one, I wouldn't lose," he said with firm assertion. "That's quite reasonable. Even if Valmont gained his title at this age, and he has unparalleled skills compared to the others, it's nothing if you are his opponent." The person on the throne said, "However, what I sense from Valmont and Joshua is different. Are you afraid you can't defeat that brat?" "Joshua," the man on the throne asked, "Not exactly, but there's definitely a difference here. In the next 10 years or even sooner there may be changes, but for now I can't possibly lose." The man on the throne smiled. "I'll ask you one more thing. If you and I fought one-on-one, what do you think would happen?" At this question, the hooded man did not give any answer. After a moment, he adjusted his posture. "How interesting. Truly very interesting. I shouldn't let others witness it. I should have verified it myself," he said seriously. "It has come to this, I will observe that brat myself." Then he used 2 fingers to make a sound, summoning someone. Immediately a faint figure appeared. "You called me, Your Majesty." The person bowed respectfully. "Jakin, can you keep that brat here for a while?" the king asked. The person replied, "The fourth prince has already prepared the plan as discussed, sir." He was surprised at that answer, Caesar. The person continued, "Just now, the royal knights have accepted the fourth prince's invitation. Of course, the target will be Joshua von Agnes. An invitation. That's also a good way." The king rubbed his chin. He thought, "Although I understand the reason for using that in reality, the 11th and 12th battalions consist of people who do not cause trouble for me. Report back if any problems occur." The person who was just summoned bowed and replied, "Yes, Your Majesty. I request permission to leave," saying that the person slowly faded away. After the person left, he burst out laughing, Joshua van Agnes. With that talent, he will become perfect because of it. In the shadow forest, the sky was blood red. The monsters roared endlessly, appearing in countless numbers. Our protagonist, with a steel rod in his hand, was struggling to fend off the attacks of the monster horde. We're surrounded. The sun is setting. Everyone was hastily preparing to set up camp. Meanwhile, the key figures were discussing the strategy for the upcoming battle. Duke Agnes Viscount Vigo spoke up. "Why are we setting up camp here instead of going further? We're in front of the shadow forest. If we're in such an open space, we could be ambushed by the monsters," he said with a worried expression. Robin, who joined the discussion, looked at him with a disdainful expression, thinking to himself, "Only the Viscount doesn't know what's going on. He's not interested in anything other than satisfying his greed." The Duke said, annoyed, "Didn't you investigate this place before opening your mouth to say such nonsense? Can you tell me what's special about this forest just by looking at it?" At the Duke's question, he said, flustered, "What's special about it?" The Duke repeated, "I'm talking about the time when the monsters become aggressive. When night falls, the monsters will go to the towns as if they are possessed by something. Especially during the blood moon, the monsters will become more aggressive than usual." The Duke continued, "The more important issue is that now, even without the blood moon, the time the monsters go to the towns has become shorter and they even attack civilians. Night will come soon. In a situation where our abilities are reduced and the monsters become aggressive, there's no way for us to approach them first." At that answer, he could only laugh. He rubbed his hands together again. "The Duke is as brilliant as expected. I couldn't even think of that. I am very impressed with your wisdom. If you understand, then go set up camp," the Duke said. "Haha, of course." Then the Duke turned to speak to his two sons. "You two also find a place to sleep." "Yes, understood," both Babel and Joshua said in unison. Scene change. Our protagonist Joshua and some others were gathering firewood in the forest. One of them spoke up, young Master Joshua. "I think that's enough," Joshua replied. "I haven't gathered enough yet. You can go back first." Saying that, everyone left, not forgetting to remind the young master, "I understand. Please don't return too late." After everyone left, Joshua dropped the bundle of firewood in his hand, used his ability to take out his weapon and slowly walked deeper into the forest. However, unfortunately, this action was seen by Viscount Vigo. The elemental stone, it's something born from primordial power. It also includes a magical element. Ancient magicians call it an elemental stone. It exists in elements like water, fire, wind, thunder, earth, and more. The stone exists because of those things, but only 5 elemental stones have appeared in the world. However, that is a distant future until those 5 stones appear. The elemental stone has the power to increase a magician's rank from level 1 to level 3. It is an item that not only magicians, but also knights covet. If my memory is correct, then one of the elemental stones is in the deepest part of the shadow forest our protagonist walked while recalling the location of the stone. It's so dark here. Just one elemental stone can help me control my power from going out of control. Our protagonist looked at the weapon in his hand. "I've been walking for almost an hour. How long will it take to reach the center of the forest? I feel like I'll get there after passing this area." Suddenly a monster appeared. However, our protagonist managed to hide in time. This monster is a black goblin. It's blocking the way to that forest. Our protagonist stood in a corner observing. Black goblin. It defeats most low-level magicians. They say you have to be at least a B-rank knight to be able to fight it. But black goblins usually operate alone. If I can use those abilities like the previous trial, I can defeat it instantly. Our protagonist was in a ready stance. It will notice me when I get within 10 meters of this range, so I will quickly close the distance and attack its neck. But sensing danger, the black goblin roared. At this moment, our protagonist from behind also felt a terrifying pressure from it. Just a roar, and it has such a great pressure, I need to finish it in one go. At this moment, the monster turned to look at Joshua. This caught him unprepared. I will surely die if I don't dodge. The situation was very dangerous, but with his agile body, Joshua quickly avoided a blow from the monster. However, with just one of its blows, we can see its terrifying power. His attacks couldn't reach the monster. Suddenly, Joshua looked up at the sky. At this moment, the moon was in its blood moon phase, the time when monsters become aggressive. I will surely die if I fight it in this state. I need to hide first. Saying that, Joshua disappeared behind the forest. I need to erase all my traces as quickly as possible. Right now he was hiding under a large tree waiting for that stupid black goblin to pass by. I will use the technique from my friend in my past life. King of Assassins. Our protagonist closed his eyes, preparing to summon his power. It's been a while, so I don't know if it will be effective. Instead of putting mana into a specific part of my body, I must control the mana and put it into my entire body. Blue streams of light appeared and surrounded Joshua slowly, as if he were merging with the nature around him, controlling his breath and forgetting everything around him. Then suddenly our protagonist opened his eyes. The monster with blazing red eyes was right behind our protagonist. However, it didn't detect our protagonist, who was right there. This showed that Joshua had succeeded in using the assassination power. Instead of attacking, he used it to search for the elemental stone. It affects my body quite a lot, but if I can maintain my mana, I will reach the center of the forest where the elemental stone is. Lost in thought, our protagonist missed his footing and fell to the ground, quite painfully. Unfortunately, the monster was also staring at him. This time it wasn't just one, but a whole pack. This time, our protagonist is surely done for. Like wild beasts, the monsters attacked one by one, instead of being afraid. Our protagonist saw this as a good thing. I want to try it too. Spear magic, second phase, second move, gale. A powerful stream of light appeared. The pressure was so strong that it knocked down quite a few monsters. However, using such a large amount of power in a short time also exhausted our protagonist considerably. I thought I had performed the second move of spear magic. Well, I guess I'm still not very proficient. Our protagonist was now unsteady on his feet. He had to lean on the steel rod, panting heavily. It's not even a quarter of its true power, I guess. A child's body has its limits. But I can't stop here. Based on the monster's direction of movement, they will clash with the knights who are setting up camp time, is the deciding factor. I need to find the elemental stone as quickly as possible and regroup with the knights. At the campsite, the tents were nearly set up. Suddenly, a sound made the soldiers pay attention. Immediately after, a monster appeared, a sword in one hand, a spear in the other hand. It charged. The poor soldier didn't even have time to counterattack before being defeated by the monsters. The situation is urgent. Everyone get into a ready stance. The monsters are ambushing us. One of the soldiers shouted. The campsite was now in chaos. Someone is injured, doctor. Form a line. Block the monsters. Meanwhile, far away in the forest, a whole pack of monsters was silently observing. Babel used his power to attack the monsters with just one blow. One monster was slashed, however their numbers were great. So it was basically a hindrance nonetheless. From behind, a warrior appeared. With just a few blows, he defeated quite a few monsters. This caught young Master Babel's attention. Who is that? Is there such a talented person in the Bloodchain Knights, based on his skills? He's C rank. Damn it. There are more than 100 of them like that. A roar echoed. Behind them, a whole pack of monsters was charging. Damn it! There must be at least 1,000 of them, a soldier said. They're too numerous. We need to retreat. At this moment, Commander Chiffon charged from behind, his voice raised. Shut up, I will punish anyone who dares to step out of this camp. The Bloodchain Knights formed a line, preparing for battle. Commander Chiffon roared. All the soldiers were in a ready stance. On the monster horde's side, they were no less formidable. They also roared, ready to charge. The scene was very hard to predict which side would win. Both sides were giving their all for the battle. Before they could rest, another horde charged from behind. They have no stopping point. This is beyond my imagination. I predicted the blood moon would happen tomorrow night, but it's happening today. At this moment in the sky, the moon was bigger and rounder than ever. The scene was soaked in blood, the color of death. The strongest monster has finally revealed itself. The pressure from its power source is terrifying. Damn it, at a time like this, Chiffon helplessly exclaimed. I am the only one here at B rank or higher. Whether we can defeat it or not depends on me. I will split you in two. Saying that, Chiffon launched his attack. However, he was quickly sent flying. It seemed Chiffon's strength was no match for this monster. Commander Chiffon Babel called out. Another soldier shouted, The Black Goblin is coming. Run! We'll be torn to shreds if we're caught. Damn it, the number of goblins isn't decreasing. Retreat. Why is this happening? Chiffon, though injured, still struggled to get up. Is it getting faster because of the blood moon? This is terrible. A knight must never lose composure in any situation. The Duke arrived. Duke Agnes Chiffon exclaimed. I will handle it from now on, he said, and the Duke strode towards the monster with a fiery spirit. If you're curious about the Duke's true power, I will now satisfy your visual cravings. Duke Agnes sent quite a few monsters flying, with just one powerful blow, scaring the monsters. They growled silently. Witnessing that, Commander Chiffon couldn't help but be astonished. With just one blow, hundreds of monsters disappeared. This is the power of a Master Duke Agnes, one of the 9 constellations of the Empire. Returning to our protagonist, he had also just defeated quite a few monsters. He strode proudly towards the deep cliff, calling out Bronto. An extremely powerful purple light appeared. At the campsite, Babel was somewhat trembling as he witnessed his father's strength. Viscount Vigo beside him spoke up. That man is your father, Aiden Van Agnes. I'm sure you can do the same because you inherited his blood. Vigo looked at Babel with a sinister expression. I guess he's still a child. No matter how talented he is, this is probably the first time he's experienced things like this. It's understandable. Now I should think about it. Then he ran to Commander Chiffon. Commander Chiffon, where is that brat? That brat? Chiffon asked again. The concubine's son named Joshua or something, he said with a stern face. Now that you mention it, I haven't seen him. Perhaps he ran away to survive. No wonder he's trash, he said. Some other soldiers began to murmur. Now that you mention it, I haven't seen him for a while. The person next to him was surprised at what he heard. What did he really run away? Isn't he too different from young Master Babel? How shameful, for the heir of the Duke's great bloodline. What are you doing? The battle is not yet over, the Duke growled. For the honor of Agnes, Babel charged with his sword. The Duke is with us. Chase them. Then everyone attacked in unison. Ha ha! Look at them running away with their tails between their legs. We will make sure you never leave this forest again. However, before they could be smug, a clang sounded. The monster fell to the ground. What's going on? A soldier shouted. At this moment, a whole army of giant monsters appeared, each one ferocious approaching. That's the Black Goblin group, the strongest monsters in this shadow forest. Meanwhile, the smaller monsters were attacking the soldiers fiercely. Don't retreat. Confront them, a soldier shouted. The scene was chaotic, watching his comrades fight. Commander Chiffon looked on helplessly. Damn it, I thought we could sweep through them easily. But this is a pack of black goblins. If you remember from the part where our protagonist went into the forest alone, he clearly said that black goblins only fight alone. Why are they fighting in a pack now? You're also wondering, right? Follow along with me to find the answer. Suddenly, a few white streams of light shot out from the air. Our protagonist Joshua suddenly appeared, launching a direct blow at the head of the Black Goblin. A series of light rays appeared. The Black Goblin was immediately defeated, leaving Chiffon and Viscount Vigo gaping in astonishment. Duke Agnes, watching, was also terrified. Young Master Joshua, a soldier's voice called out. He defeated a Black Goblin twice as strong under the blood moon with just one blow, Chiffon exclaimed, C rank. Joshua. Vigo, standing beside him, shouted, pointing at Joshua. Impossible. What was that? Just now? What trick did you use, you insect? Appearing right on time after running away. That's impossible. It's definitely impossible. He shouted, the Duke is the one who killed it with one blow. What are you doing? Lock knights. Assist the Duke immediately. He turned to look at his soldiers. As expected, it was just a coincidence. No matter how talented young Master Joshua is, he's still just a C-rank knight. He can't possibly defeat a Black Goblin twice as strong under the blood moon, something even B-rank knights would struggle with. Ignoring Vigo's words, the soldiers continued to murmur about young Master Joshua's strength. We should take this as motivation to destelloid the monsters. Everyone assist the Duke. Ha ha. I'm tired of being ignored. Our protagonist, gave a helpless smile as if he was used to this, saying that he swung his steel rod. Then I will give you all a little surprise. I might not be steady after using it. But that monster will save me anyway. One black goblin is already hard to deal with, but now it's a whole pack. What should we do? A soldier unconsciously asked. Our protagonist charged from behind. Everyone run if you don't want to be caught. Young Master Joshua. The soldier unconsciously turned. I was able to use a part of Bronto's power, but I'll be injured right after. I don't know if my body can withstand this power. Our protagonist launched a kick thunder strike. An extremely powerful beam of light appeared again. A goblin was immediately defeated. Witnessing this, Vigo knelt down and exclaimed, "Impossible!" The soldiers who saw it also couldn't believe their eyes. Young Master Joshua really defeated the black goblin. The skin of the black goblins isn't even scratched when taking slashes from B-rank knights. This is the skill of a C-rank knight, another person said. No, I don't think I've ever heard of or seen elemental mana before. Maybe young Master Joshua is an unparalleled knight. It can withstand it after doing that. The Duke, although finding it hard to believe, couldn't deny it. It probably doesn't want to show any weakness. How impressive. No wonder you have high expectations for him. Armand approached. What do you think of it? Armand the Duke asked. I'm not clear on the ranks among knights, but as a magician I can see that he is a level 3 magician, and might be an unparalleled one. He is a monster with enough talent to change the country. No, the entire history of the world is more accurate. For those who don't know what unparalleled means, it's a gift from God that only a few can use. The ability to use 2 types of magic at once by using complex magical methods without interruption. Suddenly Armand seemed to think of something and exclaimed, He can fulfill your long-held dream. I understand your thoughts. The Duke rushed towards our protagonist. At this moment our protagonist had reached his limit, no longer lucid enough to fight. At this moment a black goblin was preparing to attack, but before it could do anything to our protagonist, the Duke had already rushed in. He held our protagonist in his arms. Our protagonist's face showed a satisfied smile. The Duke, while holding our protagonist, was fighting fiercely. He looked so cool at that moment. Before completely losing consciousness, our protagonist managed to see the man's face. Not bad, then he officially passed out. In the dark night, screams and cries for help echoed in the territory of Duke Agnes. Our protagonist slowly opened his eyes. The scene before him was the Duke's castle on fire. What the heck? Our protagonist was floating in midair looking down at the scene below. Fire now engulfed the entire castle. This is a dream. Perhaps our protagonist thought he was dreaming, but the scene was too real to be a dream. From the flames a person emerged, holding the Duke's sword. Our protagonist thought it was Duke Agnes. However, the image of that person was not Duke Agnes, but Babel, his eyes full of hatred. Our protagonist from above couldn't help but wonder, is this when the territory of Duke Agnes was wiped out? Is this what will happen in 10 years? How could I? This is a special dream. I'm having a prophetic dream with the power of Bronto. If it's an elemental stone, then it's very likely. Even the great magicians of the Magic Tower couldn't fully discover the abilities of the stones. What is this wind? A gust of wind rushed towards Babel. Causing him to scream in pain, a girl appeared before him. Annabelle Grace, our protagonist, exclaimed, and the high-level spirit. Although I don't remember anything about Ina, I'm certain of one thing after seeing Spirit. Something happened between Duke Agnes and Ina. Wait. And if she's here really? If Annabelle Gray is a master, then that person must be here too. Both Babel and Ina were talking about something. Babel seemed harsh, however our protagonist couldn't hear what they were talking about. Joshua guessed they were using a silent spell or something to communicate. This is so annoying, Joshua said. Another person appeared. All 3 were saying something. Although our protagonist couldn't see the person's face or hear their voice, I'm sure it's him. Our protagonist flew towards the source of light, but stopped when he heard Babel's voice. Shut up. You think you can make Duke Agnes kneel, just because you have a few hunting dogs? Babel struggled to stand up. He stood in a ready-to-fight stance. Only seeing the mysterious person smile, he said something. Ina's spirit suddenly rushed to attack Babel. He took the full blow. Looking at his expression, we also know how much pain he must have suffered. Before leaving, the person didn't forget to say something. His face was revealed with a contemptuous smile. Our protagonist witnessed it all. You bastard! Draxia! Ah! Joshua exclaimed upon seeing his face. Suddenly, an extremely powerful light appeared, blowing our protagonist away. At the same time, our protagonist's eyes flew open, and he shouted, "Draxia vel Grace." That must be a prophetic dream rather than a normal dream. Our protagonist sighed. He sat up. More importantly, how much time has passed? Our protagonist intended to get out of bed, but it seemed his body hadn't fully recovered yet. He winced in pain. Has my body still not accepted it? Our protagonist looked at his bandaged hand. Although I've passed the first phase of spear magic and have entered the second phase, our protagonist's hand clenched. It's only at the highest level of a C-rank knight. To unleash the power of spear magic and fight monsters, I need to start at around B-rank knight. It might be thanks to Bronto's thunder attribute, and above all, if the prophetic dream is another power Bronto has, then I need to learn more about the elemental stone. Isn't it fascinating? Duke Agnes sat beside him and spoke. Duke, our protagonist, exclaimed in surprise. Although it had only been a few hours, that blood-red moon seemed about to swallow the entire world as it emanated a strange energy. The Duke said, looking at the moon outside the window, but now it displays a cold and beautiful light. Unconsciously, our protagonist also looked up at the moon outside the window. Right after we arrive at the duchy, we will go to Akkadi immediately. As I explained before, you will not go as Joshua von Agnes. Now you are only the sole son of the Viscount Frederick family, a fallen family. You are a noble one who is struggling to revive a fallen family. That is your new identity, the Duke said. I understand, our protagonist replied. If that is what is necessary, I am happy to comply, as nothing good will come from being scrutinized. The important thing for me now is to regain my former strength. And the Duke looked at our protagonist and said, I didn't know you talk in your sleep. But you mentioned a rather interesting name, Draxia vel Grace, the Duke said with a stern face. How do you know that cursed name? Duke Agnes was now a bit curious because he didn't understand where Joshua knew that name from a cursed name. The air in the room was now frighteningly quiet, with only the crackling sound of the candle on the wall. After a while, Duke Agnes seemed unable to bear the silence any longer, so he stood up and walked out. But Duke Agnes still didn't forget to remind Joshua to sleep early because tomorrow they would depart to return to the main capital of the territory. Joshua heard this and just silently watched that tall figure slowly disappear behind the door. A few hours later, darkness had gradually enveloped the Lock Palace. At the same time, in a secret room, a private conversation was taking place. Viscount Vigo was now a bit puzzled as to why Vanessa would let this continue under her nose. Because Joshua is a real threat to Babel in the succession war, Chiffon heard this and also didn't know what to do, because he knew very well that Lady Vanessa had no opportunity to act. Besides, Joshua has always been a stable boy who would have thought he was hiding such a talent. Viscount Vigo heard this and became even more contemptuous, because he thought a maid's son couldn't possibly have much talent. Even Babel considered the #1 genius of the kingdom. To get that position, he also had to have immense support from the Agnes family, and Babel's swordsmanship was also personally taught by Duke Agnes. But Joshua is different. He has no big shot behind him, so it's impossible to defeat a black goblin with skills beyond C rank. Even the C rank knights there couldn't do that. Chiffon heard this and also agreed with the Viscount, because he knew very well that it was impossible for a C rank knight. But they witnessed the scene of Joshua defeating the black goblin, so they simply thought he was just a magic knight. Viscount Vigo had a more rational thought. It was Joshua who made a pact with some high-level demon to gain that power. Chiffon heard that and did not agree because Joshua was recognized by Duke Agnes and the Roydal Knights. Moreover, Chiffon was also there, so he also knew that Joshua did not have any magical power. Viscount Vigo heard this and also didn't care because he didn't pay attention to whether Joshua's contract with the demon was real or not. Chiffon heard these words and also understood Viscount Vigo was trying to frame him to overthrow that genius title. Actually, he also felt quite lucky that Joshua displayed his strength this early. If he were allowed to develop for a few more years, there's a possibility Babel's faction would be overthrown. Therefore, Viscount Vigo decided to teach Joshua what it means for a tall tree to catch the wind. Chiffon heard this and was a bit confused, not knowing what the old man wanted to do. It turned out he wanted to continue monitoring Joshua, because coincidentally, Viscount Vigo's daughter also received an invitation to enroll in the Royal Academy. Therefore, they could monitor Joshua's every move right there, saying that Viscount Vigo walked out. But before that, he also didn't forget to remind Chiffon to pay more attention to this matter, because if Joshua sets his sights on the Viscount's position, it will be more troublesome for them. Chiffon heard this, and also understood the meaning. Anyway, prevention is better than cure. Therefore, they can only eliminate the threat as soon as possible. In the room now, only Chiffon was left standing there. In his mind, a plan was forming to drag Joshua into this dirty water. The next morning at Agnes's mansion, Cheryl was now standing there watching each leaf fly gracefully in the air. At this moment, the door behind her suddenly burst open. It was Cox, who was rushing to report an urgent matter. Cheryl heard this and also didn't understand what could have made him cause such a commotion. It turned out that Joshua was returning from the purification in the Black Forest. She heard that the Agnes family would hold a party to purify the Viscount, so she came to inform Cheryl. Hearing this, her face showed no joy, and she turned away to continue her days. Cox saw this scene and was a bit puzzled, because he thought Cheryl would jump for joy upon hearing this news. She heard this and was a bit confused as to why she would think that, because as far as Cheryl knew, he didn't have much of a good impression of Joshua. Actually, Cox didn't like him at first either. However, that was just because of his status as the son of that maid. But now, Joshua has become the youngest magician in history. There are things that the Fonte clan, no matter how wealthy and prestigious, can't possibly buy. Cheryl was a bit confused when she heard that Cox asked her again why the Count sent them to the Agnes family. How could Cheryl not know? Because the mercenary king would do everything to create a relationship between her and Babel. After all, no one would have expected that guy to be on the same side as the Babel family. Mercenary King Barbariant is a commoner swordmaster who has reached A rank No, the highest level of axe wielding. Not only that he is also one of the 12 superhumans who can fight on par with the stars, he is the symbol of the mercenaries, and promulgates the laws of this group, causing them to separate from the other groups, becoming an independent group in the kingdom. That was the Mercenary King. But according to information provided by the Fonte family's insiders, the Mercenary King had secretly allied with Marquis Crombel, the second richest man in the Avalon Kingdom. Since they were both merchants, conflict was inevitable, and the relationship between them had grown so large that a spark could ignite a territorial war at any time. It's just a rumor among the merchants, but if it's true, the Fonte family can't handle it on their own. Cox smiled when he heard that, realizing that his young lady had grown up based on what Cheryl said it was true, because both families were influential merchants in the dynasty, so rumors were a very sensitive issue. If the rumors were allowed to spread, they could very well become true, because other families heard this rumor and fought to get this big piece of cake. After all, the Avalon dynasty's underground water was still turbulent, because on the surface, the country was still peaceful and the people were safe, because the central government did not allow war to happen. However, if these fighting stories surfaced, the dynasty would have problems. Cheryl heard that and understood. If supernatural beings like the Mercenary King could not be bought with money, they could be bound by political marriage, and if Cheryl and Babel were to get engaged, she would have Duke Agnes's support. Cheryl was a little bitter about himself turning into a main pawn. Cox saw this scene and scratched his head because according to what he knew about the young lady, she should be shouting because she knew she was the key point. At this moment, Cheryl interrupted Cox's train of thought. I don't need to ask him for help, right? Hearing this, he had no choice but to explain. Actually, for noble's honor is the most important thing, especially for the 5 great families. Therefore, even though the Fonte family wants help from Viscount Agnes, but they won't bow their heads for that. Anyway, the current situation is still under control. Hearing that, Cheryl pondered for a moment and asked, Do you think differently? Cox hearing this, he directly expressed his opinion. At least this subordinate will not do anything foolish, like putting pride above the safety of the family. In fact, she had long seen that although Cheryl was interested in Babel, however, her heart was not there, so he hoped Cheryl would not sacrifice herself for the benefit of the family. But the current problem is that the Fonte family is in imminent danger, so she wants Cheryl to talk to Joshua one more time. Hearing these words, her eyes welled up with tears, deeply moved. Seeing this, the attendant realized in embarrassment that Cox had said a bit too much. However, Cheryl didn't blame her for it. On the contrary, she agreed to the attendant's suggestion. Hearing this, he was delighted and then stepped back to find Joshua, seeing that the attendant had left Cheryl's side. Honestly, she didn't know if this was okay or not. That night, The sky of the Agnes mansion was lit up by the light of fireworks. Today was the day the Crimson Knight Squad returned from the Great Lock County. Therefore, a grand banquet was held to cleanse them. At this time in the mansion, the knights were boisterously boasting about their achievements on the battlefield. However, behind that noisy great hall, Joshua was quietly leaving. Cain was a little curious at this moment. After all, Joshua was the star of this party, yet he was leaving so quietly like this. Joshua heard that and smiled lightly, because Cain said the word master too naturally. If others heard it, it would become a topic of gossip during tea parties. Hearing that, Cain didn't think it was a problem, because after this purification in his heart, he truly considered Joshua his master. Seeing this, he laughed teasingly. Do I have no other choice? I have the right to refuse a knight's oath. Hearing this, Cain jumped forward and laughed because he knew very well that Joshua wouldn't be foolish enough to refuse a subordinate who was a master. Hearing this, he also didn't understand where Cain got such confidence from. Then Joshua sent this guy home. After all, he was a bit tired after a long journey. Hearing this,